A lot of poor people were affected too. A lot of just regular working class families were affected too. And a lot of those families found out the week of the fires that they lost their health, not their health, their fire insurance. But either way, Luigi is like, you're welcome. You know, Luigi killed it. And that kid did almost plan like the perfect crime. He did everything right. He planned everything perfectly. The only thing he forgot was to shave his eyebrows. As soon as I saw him on the news, I was like, yeah, that's him.
The Trump administration wants to put Luigi Mangione to death for fatally shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, ending President Biden's moratorium on federal executions. Mangione has pleaded not guilty to state charges, and his lawyers have told the court they oppose the federal push for the death penalty. As NPR's Kristen Wright reports, Mangione's case is part of the shifting politics of capital punishment in the U.S.
Under the Trump administration, Attorney General Pam Bondi is directing federal prosecutors to aggressively pursue the death penalty. That includes in the case against Luigi Mangione. Here she is on Fox News.
This guy's charged with a violent crime, and we're going to seek the death penalty whenever possible.
Mangione appears to be the first high-profile case the Justice Department is tying to President Trump's Day One executive order that lifted President Biden's moratorium, though Mangione has yet to be formally indicted by a federal grand jury. Robin Marr is the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center, which does not take a position on the issue, but opposes how it's been used. She says the timing of Bondi's announcement is telling.
Here we have Attorney General Bondi herself saying that her decision to seek death for Mr. Mangione was to, quote, carry out President Trump's agenda. That statement, in combination with the unusual timing in this case, suggests that the death penalty is being used here to achieve some political purpose.
Federal prosecutors in New York didn't immediately respond to a request for comment about the perception of politics in the Mangione case. Marr says this all continues the shifting politics of the death penalty debate.
In 1972, the United States Supreme Court invalidated both the federal death penalty and all state death penalty statutes. In 1988, the Federal Anti-Drug Abuse Act expanded the federal death penalty for drug-related murders.
Then the pendulum swung again, and Congress passed another law expanding the death penalty in 1994. In 2001, Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber, was the first federal death row inmate executed in almost 40 years. Marr says then things shifted again.
Between 2001 and 2020, the federal death penalty was being heavily criticized and scrutinized because of a lot of concerns about the racially biased way that it was used.
The first Trump administration executed 13 death row inmates, compared to 3 in all of the prior 3 presidencies. In the weeks leading up to Trump's second term, President Biden commuted the death sentences of 37 people on federal death row. Now the Trump administration wants to ramp up federal executions and to help state officials bring their own capital cases against the inmates whose death sentences were commuted by Biden. The Justice Department is also pledging to help states secure enough drugs to carry out lethal injections. 27 states have the death penalty. One of them is South Carolina.
In South Carolina, we went over a decade without even having any executions because we just didn't have the drug to administer for the execution. Over a decade.
That's David Pasco, chief prosecutor for 3 counties in South Carolina. He pushed for a state law giving prisoners the option of execution by firing squad. South Carolina has now already executed 3 people this year. Pasco prosecuted the most recent and welcomes support from the federal government to continue executions in his state. Do you think it means that prosecutors in South Carolina will pursue the death penalty in more cases?
It's hard to say whether it'll be more cases or not, but it's going to be very appreciated in facilitating us to reach justice in our cases. I know that.
Mangione faces federal and state murder charges. He's pleaded not guilty in New York State, which doesn't allow the death penalty for state convictions. The only 3 remaining federal death row prisoners are still appealing their cases. Kristen Wright, NPR News, Washington.
Invest in the Context of White Supremacy radio program. Constructive information on what racism, white supremacy is, and how it works. Visit the blog at racism-notes.blogspot.com. That's racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button is in the top right corner. Links for Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal are below. Gus's wish list is at Amazon under Gus T. Renegade. 15 years and counting of counter-racist content.
Have you ever been scammed? Well, a few years ago, I was sitting at work when the phone rang. It looked like the call was coming from the Kansas City Police Department. I grew up in that area, so fearing the worst for my family, I picked up. The person at the other end told me there was a warrant out for my arrest, and to resolve it, I would need to buy gift cards and give him the redemption numbers. I knew it was fake, but despite my better judgment, I stayed on the line for nearly an hour. It took my boss pulling the phone out of my hand and pushing end for me to actually disconnect the call. Wall Street Journal family and tech columnist Julie Jargon has written about a new kind of scam that works in much the same way, but with the help of AI, it can be much more convincing. So Julie, tell us about how this type of scam works.
Yeah, so there's this whole category of fraud called imposter scams, and that's where someone impersonates somebody that you know. And in some cases, they can actually do a really good job of that by using generative AI to create a voice that sounds just like that of someone you know, or that can approximate the voice of someone you know. And these are cheap tools that are available online.
And you talked to someone who fell victim to this kind of scam.
Yeah, I talked to this woman named Linda Rohn, who lives in Colorado, and one night she was at home making herself dinner, and the phone rang, and the call was from a local number, so she picked up, and she immediately heard the voice of a young woman that she said sounded just like one of her daughters, saying, "Mom, I'm okay, but something awful has happened, and I need your help." This mother did what any mother would do and immediately went into sort of panic mode, wondering what has happened. Apparently the phone got taken away, and a man came on the line and said that her daughter had witnessed a drug deal and screamed and scared away the buyers, and now he was out a lot of money and he needed her, Linda, to wire him money to make things right. And if she didn't do that, he would not release her daughter, who he had pulled into the back of a van. She ended up doing a wire transfer online and wired $1,000 and then another $1,000. Finally, the whole thing was over, and she called her daughter to see if she was okay and found out that this hadn't happened at all to her daughter. Her daughter was safe at home.
You know, I was shocked to see how easy it is to clone someone's voice. Just walk us through how this process works.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different methods that criminals can use. One is actual voice cloning, where you take a snippet of audio and you can create a likeness from that. All it takes is 3 seconds of audio to clone a voice with about 85% accuracy. And that's according to McAfee, which is a security software firm. And people have so much data online, especially young people that have social media accounts and are posting TikTok videos and YouTube videos. So there's a wealth of online audio from people. And so especially when these scammers are targeting people who have children of, who are in their 20s and 30s and up, it's not hard to find voice clips of people that can be cloned. And then there's also a lot of voice changing apps that are free or inexpensive that can be found on app stores. And it's not a voice clone per se, but it's a way to change your voice to sound like someone younger or someone with a different accent or someone of a different gender. So that's another way that people can easily create voices that might sound like a 25-year-old in Texas or whatever.
And like you say, if that happens, you become more vulnerable to a scam like this because they've got basic information about who you might be talking to, so you're more inclined to believe that it is who they say it is on the other end of the phone. I'm curious, Julie, you report on tech and the growing use of AI. How did you come across this scam, and how pervasive is it? How prevalent is it in society now?
It is rather pervasive. The Federal Trade Commission has identified imposter scams as the most reported type of scam last year. And people have lost in total, these are just reported cases because a lot of people don't end up reporting that this even happens, but it's resulted in losses of nearly $3 billion. And the FBI has put out a warning about these kind of voice-related scams using AI. It's definitely on the rise, and the technology is making these things more believable.
So how can we as consumers, as everyday people, protect ourselves against falling for this kind of scam?
So some of the things you can do are create a code word with family members, something that's unique but easy to remember with like your closest family members, so that if anyone does receive a suspicious call, you can ask, what's the code word? And if that person can't say it, then it's a pretty good tip-off that it's a scam and you should just hang up. And you should always try to verify that, you know, who you're talking to on the phone is really that person. And there are a couple of ways to do that in the moment. You can text that person. You can also, if you share locations with your family members, you can check your phone and see where is that person. So there are a few different methods for trying to safeguard against this.
That was WSJ family and tech columnist Julie Jargon.
You're dirt. We think you're dirt, Paul. Who is we? The West, all the superpowers, everything you believe in, Paul. They think you're dirt. They think you're dumb. You're worthless.
I'm afraid I don't understand what you are saying, sir.
Oh, come on, don't bullshit me, Paul. You're the smartest man here. You got them all eating out of your hands. You could own this freaking hotel, except for one thing. You're black. You're not even a nigger. You're an African.
As the United States builds strategic ties with some African nations, it's also considering degrading relations with several others. Since Donald Trump's return to the White House, Africa has once again been hit by a series of hardline policies, from travel bans and visa restrictions to aid cuts and trade tariffs. The continent is facing headwinds, and now Washington is planning to reduce its diplomatic footprint in Africa drastically. New reports reveal that the Trump administration is considering closing nearly 30 U.S. embassies and consulates worldwide. Many of them are located in Africa. Now, the move is part of a sweeping shake-up at the State Department, driven by the Elon Musk-backed Department of Government Efficiency, with a focus on shrinking federal operations. The U.S. is looking to shut down 10 embassies and 17 consulates across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. In Africa, embassy closures are being considered in Eritrea, Gambia, Lesotho, Republic of Congo, and South Sudan. In South Africa, the U.S. could shut its consulate, while diplomatic missions in Somalia may face downsizing despite their critical role in counter-terrorism. Now, the plan is still under review and would need sign-off from Secretary of State Marco Rubio or the White House. Embassy and consulate closures are also being considered in France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. But for Africa, the impact could be far more profound. Less diplomatic presence means greater isolation on the global stage. Embassies are crucial for diplomatic engagement, development coordination, and public outreach. Shutting them down risks cutting off direct communication with governments and local communities. It could erode people-to-people ties. Now, Trump's policies have already altered U.S.-Africa relations. Many nations are facing aid withdrawals, tougher immigration rules, and deportation orders. In South Africa, diplomatic relations have soured after Trump accused the country of mistreating white farmers and committing human rights violations, a claim widely rejected by experts and officials alike. But as the U.S. pulls back, other global powers are rushing in to fill the void. China, Russia, Turkey, and the Gulf states are deepening trade, infrastructure, and defense ties across the continent. So while the U.S. steps back, Africa's geopolitical balance could shift in real time.
I think that the white people should be ashamed of the deplorable situation that has been existing in the Congo, which is not the fault of the Congolese, but which is the result of instigation by European powers who are fighting each other over the mineral wealth of the Congo. And now to make it appear that the Congolese themselves are criminals or brutes because they're reacting to these injustices that they've been victimized by is again ducking the question.
We also want to ask Jan Egeland, since you've recently returned from the Democratic Republic of Congo, you know, what the situation on the ground there is. President Trump's senior advisor for Africa has just finished a tour of several East African nations, including the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, where he discussed a peace deal that could involve the U.S. tapping its rich mineral resources in the war-torn east of the country, including cobalt and lithium. This is Masad Bulu speaking last weekend in Kigali, Rwanda, which neighbors the DRC.
I can confirm And I can affirm that the United States also remains committed to this effort and is ready to facilitate an end to the conflict, obviously a peaceful end to this conflict, an end that allows countries to secure their borders and lays the foundation for a thriving regional economy.
Rwanda has long been accused of propping up M23 fighters who've been steadily advancing in eastern DRC, exacerbating an already catastrophic humanitarian situation. Over 7,000 people have been killed since the start of the year, over 1 million others forcibly displaced. Jan Egeland, as Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, you just recently returned from the eastern DRC. If you can end this conversation by talking about the gravity of the situation there and what needs to happen as the U.S. once again, a kind of reprise of a very shameful history, is working on a mineral deal with the DRC.
The Democratic Republic of Congo has been in turmoil, in fighting now for more than a generation, and especially in the eastern part of the country. And it has also, like Sudan, had a lot of attention in the past. Now, neglect, really. I was in Goma, which is the capital of the eastern part of DRC and the provinces of Kivu, fully under control of this rebel group, the M23. They have taken not only Goma, which was more than 2 million people, but also Bukavu, more than 1 million people in South Kivu. Paradoxically, by them controlling the whole area, people can now return home. So for the first time in my many years of traveling to eastern Congo, many people had returned home, 1.8 million. I met them in 4 communities where the Norwegian Refugee Council is helping them reintegrate on their ancestral land. We will give them seeds. We will help them with farming and with education and with water again. They're happy to be back. But 1.2 million others were displaced by the recent fighting when M23 took this territory from the central government army. So I hope the U.S. will really do 2 things. Resume being the largest aid provider to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Many of the aid organizations are dependent from 50 to 100% of their aid operations on the U.S. And when everything is cut overnight, of course, it has a devastating impact. And even now, when we could help people home and we could solve some of the problems. And the minerals, yes, I mean, these people are among the poorest in the world. They're among the most abused, and they live on top of the incredible mineral riches that have been plundered by so many companies, so many colonial powers, so many of the neighbors of DRC. I hope the U.S. will really make sure that there is an equitable deal that can benefit the people, but that can only happen if there is a peace agreement, and that has to involve the central government, the Rwanda neighboring country, Uganda, Burundi, and the largest rebel groups, including M23.
Have any of you ever been to Africa, back to the motherland? There's something. When I went to Zimbabwe, it's a new country, right? It's about 3 years old now, because it used to be Rhodesia before they killed all them white motherfuckers over. It's the only country I've ever been to. Black people kicked ass over there. 7 years, they killed motherfuckers, Jack. They happy, too. You walk down the street, they just smiling.
Hello. Oh, they don't fuck with us no more, no.
Shifting focus to Zimbabwe, the country is paying millions in compensation to white farmers whose land was forcibly seized 2 decades ago. Zimbabwe's government has announced an initial payout of $3 million to local white farmers who lost their land in the early 2000s. The farms were seized during a controversial land reform program between 2000 and 2001. Now, this is the first payment under a 2020 compensation deal between the state and the farmers. Under that agreement, Zimbabwe promised to pay $3.5 billion in total. The current payout covers 378 farms out of the 740 approved for compensation. Now, it accounts for just 1% of the $311 million allocated for the first phase. The government says that this marks a step toward honoring its obligations to compensate farmers affected by land seizures. In 2000, then President Robert Mugabe launched a radical land reform. Thousands of white farmers lost their land, which was redistributed to black Zimbabweans. The move was meant to correct historic injustices. As at independence in 1980, most fertile land was owned by just 4,000 black farmers. But the land reforms were often violent and aggressive. Critics say that many farms went to Mugabe's political allies, while new landholders lacked the tools and training to farm effectively. In the aftermath, agricultural production collapsed and the economy crashed. Now, Zimbabwe's relations with the West also fell apart. President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who came to power after the 2017 coup, has been trying to repair ties with the West. Zimbabwe has been isolated from the global financial system for over 2 decades. Its economy is still burdened with massive foreign debt. Earlier this year, the government also began compensating foreign investors whose land was protected under bilateral treaties. The latest compensation move also comes as neighboring South Africa faces tensions with the U.S. President Donald Trump accuses South Africa of seizing white-owned farms and has used it to justify cutting aid and expelling diplomats. Analysts say that Zimbabwe's payouts could help to repair Western relations and avoid international scrutiny.
Knowing that there was such a thing as outdoors bred in us a hunger for property, for ownership, the firm possession of a yard, a porch, a grape arbor. Property black people spent all their energies, all their love on their nests. Like frenzied, desperate birds, they overdecorated everything, fussed and fidgeted over their hard-won homes, canned, jellied, and preserved all summer to fill the cupboards and the shelves. They painted, picked, and poked at every corner of their houses. And these houses loomed like hothouse sunflowers among the rows of weeds that were the rented houses. Renting blacks cast furtive glances at these owned yards and porches, and made firmer commitments to buy themselves some nice little old place. In the meantime, they saved and scratched and piled away what they could in the rented hovel, looking forward to the day of property.
Earlier this week, we told you about a Bay Area appraiser who has agreed to pay a local couple $75,000 in a settlement agreement after the family filed a civil rights complaint with the California Civil Rights Department. Well, today we can confirm that couple is Ron and Dominique Curtis, the East Bay family prominently featured in the ABC 7 News documentary I produced, Our America Lowballed. Ron Curtis is joining us live now with reaction to the settlement agreement. Ron, so good to see you, man.
Hey, Julian, good to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
Of course, always great to have you to discuss this ongoing case we've been following for years now. We'll get to the specifics of the settlement in just a few moments, but I want to start with how we got here, right? You and your wife, you were trying to refinance the loan on your Oakland home back in 2020 to take advantage of these historically low interest rates. The home was appraised $250,000 lower than expected. That forced that loan to fall through. You and your wife believed that racial bias was a factor, and you ultimately had to sell the property. How did that affect your family?
So just speaking on as far as the things that I can't speak on. So we sold our home, and like, you know, home ownership is a place where you could build equity. And equity, we can take that out later as far as refining or whatever we want to do to open a business or to maybe even put our child through college. Our child being 9 years old right now, we really don't know how it's affected us, to be honest with you, to answer your question. So we're renters now. We've moved 3 times. since. So everything that comes along with that, that's affected us that way. And then we're kind of just still trying to push and move forward. And we really don't know how it is going to affect us, over the next decade or 2-3 decades to come from that.
And to put a fine point on that, when you all ultimately sold the property, it sold for $300,000 more than what the appraiser appraised it for in that refinance application. So it just goes to show that something was a bit off there. Let's talk about the series of settlement agreements now. The appraiser has agreed to pay you and your wife $75,000 in Watch Our documentary Lowballed. The appraisal management company agreed to pay an undisclosed amount of money and retrain staff, and the lender, who we know is Quicken Loans from our original reporting, agreed to continue offering second appraisals where discrimination is alleged. What do you make of the terms of the settlement?
So I can't speak directly to any of that, really. What I can speak to, though, is as far as the appraiser goes, and appraisers in general have something called errors and omissions assurance, which is what we went after, and that's what that's there for as far as the appraiser goes.
Let's talk about how long this all has taken, right, to play out. You all were assisted in this process by the fair housing advocates of Northern California and civil rights law firm Relman Colfax. But Ron, this took 4 years. I mean, we first met in 2021. Here we are in 2025. This is just getting resolved. What's your advice to other families who believe that they have faced housing discrimination and are trying to figure out what to do?
My advice would be to gain as much support as you can. Julian, you were a huge support for us on this, as well as ABC7 and the documentary. Fair Housing Advocates of Northern California, they were key in this entire process as well as a law firm named called Relman and Colfax, based out of D.C. So my advice would be to document and to gain as much support as you can, and make sure you reach out to Fair Housing Advocates of Northern California if you're located here in the East Bay.
Really good advice there. Ron, I also got to give you all some props, too. You all did your due diligence in documenting things like you mentioned. You and your wife, you all put together a 60-page rebuttal that ultimately didn't lead to the outcome that you all were looking for, but you put in that really hard work of documenting everything accurately.
We did, and I think our background in real estate really helped us do that. So another thing for people to do, like, you mentioned, is to document and to reach out to a real estate professional like myself or my wife. And my wife, she really wanted to be here today also, but Dominique is actually out doing a home inspection. She's licensed. She's an appraiser now as well.
Yeah, quite the turn of events to this story. As you mentioned, your wife, Dominique, now an appraiser here in the Bay Area. Ryan, always great to see you. We appreciate you coming on to the show here.
Thank you so much, Julian. We really appreciate you.
All right, Ryan. Well, we also want to mention the appraisal management company sent a statement to ABC7 saying Clear Capital appreciates being able to work alongside the California Civil Rights Department to resolve this matter. We will continue to maintain the systems and processes outlined in that settlement agreement. I've also reached out to the lender in this case for comment. We have not yet heard back. We'll update you on our website, abc7news.com, if we do. And while you're there, you can watch the documentary, Our America Lowballed, on our website or the ABC7 News Bay Area app or Hulu, if you have that too.
Billie Holiday, I sing your blues. Bet your life against me and I swear to God you'll lose it. Motherfuck the cops, we still singing for St. Louis. Motherfuck the cops, we still singing for St. Louis. Motherfuck the cops, we still singing for St. Louis.
Good evening, everyone. Missouri Republicans continue to send the message that diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, also called DEI, are not welcome in the state. Hannah Falcon breaks down how these latest efforts affect Missourians.
Efforts coming from multiple branches of the Missouri government today to dismantle DEI programs across the state. This has been a growing trend among Missouri Republicans.
We want more diversity. We want diversity of thought, though, as well.
St. Louis County Republican Senator Ben Brown presents his bill to get rid of DEI in the hiring process for universities and colleges today. He believes forcing DEI statements and policies on people is getting rid of diverse ideologies in higher education.
This diverts faculty energy away from teaching and research and places it more on political indoctrination.
This is only the latest effort to get rid of DEI in higher education. Republicans added language to the state budget promising to cut off state funds if colleges or universities continue DEI programs. Many universities and colleges that receive public funds from the state have already dismantled DEI departments and programs in anticipation of these efforts, including the University of Missouri and Missouri State University.
Attacks on DEI are attacks on women, people of color, people with disabilities.
Columbia Democratic Representative David Tyson Smith says DEI does not take away merit-based hiring.
But it just opens a door to get people in.
It's not just higher education. Attorney General Andrew Bailey sent a letter demanding the country's leading companies abandon DEI practices today. Bailey is joined by 14 other states in, quote, fighting to protect working Americans and investors from these woke political trends and blatant racial discrimination, end quote. He threatened legal action if the DEI practices do not stop. He has already filed lawsuits against Starbucks and IBM. Reporting in Jefferson City, I'm Hannah Falcon, Heartland News.
Milwaukee
for late in May.
Milwaukee
for late in May.
Milwaukee
for late in May.
Milwaukee.
Yes, I did use a space heater, but I mean, this is something that could have so easily been prevented if, you know, it would have been taken care of right the first time.
That is Easter Milner. She used to live at a Barada property off 91st and Fond du Lac until it went up in flames in February. It displaced her and everybody else in that building.
The fire started after Easter says she was running a space heater because she repeatedly had no heat.
Jenna Ray investigates heat complaints citywide and reveals the landlord who racked up the most.
What's it like being back here now that, you know, no one's living in here and it's boarded up? What's it kind of like to see?
It's disheartening because, I mean, I wasn't the only one affected. Like, it was everyone's lives was affected. I feel terrible about this situation. I feel nothing but hurt, you know, and disappointment. Yeah. And let down mostly.
By who?
By my landlord.
On February 20th, Easter Milner spent the day with her mother. She got home early morning on the 21st.
When I came home, the heat was off. I would prefer to use my natural heat, but it was so cold that night.
Easter says her heat wasn't working, and with outside temperatures in the single digits, she said using a space heater was her only option. A few hours later,
I woke up, like I said, to use the restroom. When I came back to my room, the mattress was on fire. The mattress was on fire. Fire extinguisher had jammed, it didn't work. By then the fire had moved so quickly, it got out of control, I just got out of there.
Photos from that early morning blaze show smoke pouring out of the building. Everyone living there was left homeless.
You lost everything.
Everything.
Why is this so emotional for you to talk about?
Because it was everything. Like, it was everything that I had. And I mean, the problem, it could have been prevented. Yes, I did use the space heater, but I mean, this is something that could have so easily been prevented if, you know, it would have been taken care of right the first time.
Since the start of 2025, Easter says she emailed her landlord, Barada Properties, and its attorneys at least 5 times about her heat not working.
I sent them numerous emails, as well as called them, left numerous messages, as well as talked to one of the representatives numerous times.
For 2 years, I've reported on Barada tenants enduring freezing conditions because their heat stopped working. So I requested every single no heat complaint citywide over the last 2 years. The Department of Neighborhood Services tracked nearly 1,400 complaints during that time. Calls to Barada topped the list. And despite Barada only owning 6% of all rental units in the city, it made up 36% of all no heat complaints.
My staff is kind of burnt out. The constant going out to no heat, understanding the fact that, you know, we're kind of also human in this and we want the heat for these people.
Lori Gallup's a DNS manager who oversees supervisors and special enforcement inspectors, the folks responding to those heat outages. She wouldn't speak about Barada Properties directly, but says an exorbitant amount of no heat tickets taxes her staff.
Can you talk about how properties with higher heat complaints and constant heat complaints take resources away from your inspectors?
I had to pull multiple staff in to handle multiple no heat complaints. That exhausted a lot of our staff. It took away from our normal, everyday kind of routine activities.
Routine activities for DNS that Lori says should be routine activities for landlords to avoid complaints.
It's maintenance. It's maintaining your systems. So when we are taxing them with, minus temperatures out there, that, they're going to operate when they need to. So a little bit more eyes on your properties, talk to your tenants.
We called. It's Jenna with TMJ4 and emailed Barada multiple times to ask about the high number of heat complaints, but never heard back. Time and time again, Barada tenants tell me they're left freezing with minimal communication and in some cases, like Easter, homeless.
I'm paying you for a service. I mean, I shouldn't have to go without, because if it was, flipped around, you wouldn't go without.
In Milwaukee, I'm Jenna Ray for TMJ4 News.
From heat complaints, trash problems, and more, Jenna investigates a lot of issues with landlords and was able to bring you this report because of a viewer tip.
Milwaukee.
For late May.
Health Commissioner Mike Todoritis says his department is focused on local efforts to get students screened for lead after CDC officials told him that they couldn't help because their lead program was cut.
The CDC sending their team here was going to help us actually look through the data that we were going to be receiving through the screening clinic.
Todoritis says the absence of federal support is a loss. In the meantime, Children's Wisconsin has stepped up to organize free lead screening clinics. He says so far, the number of children who have tested positive is, quote, very low. Lead hazards have been found in 7 Milwaukee public schools. Anna Marie Yanni, Wisconsin Public Radio.
Why haven't you learned anything?
More than 11,000 Colorado kids rely on Head Start for child care and preschool education. The White House could end its funding. CPR's Jenny Brundin talked with Arlo Perez-Esquivel about how that could affect families here.
Head Start was founded in 1965 as part of the Johnson administration's War on Poverty. It aims to get low-income children from birth to 5 years old ready for school.
Now, these cuts are part of a White House budget draft for the year 2026. Do we know how Colorado kids will be affected if it does go into effect?
If Head Start were eliminated, the more than 11,000 children you mentioned would not have access to early education and family support. 1 in 5 Head Start programs are in rural counties in Colorado, and altogether the centers employ about 5,000 people.
A lot of the Trump administration cuts are done in the name of cost savings. What does the research show about whether Head Start is cost-effective or not?
Yeah, for every $1 invested in Head Start, taxpayers see up to $9 in return.
Wow.
Yeah, here's Heather Friends, who's executive director of the Colorado Head Start Association.
Children in a Head Start are more likely to graduate high school. They're less likely to repeat a grade and less likely to enter the criminal justice system. And we have 60 years of evidence to that.
Many children in Head Start have a higher rate of what's called adverse childhood experiences. Those are things like experiencing or witnessing violence or abuse or other forms of trauma or loss.
They really deeply connect with caregivers like Head Start providers. And so to lose that or to change that could be very detrimental to them.
Jenny, as you know, the budget draft proposal that we're discussing was obtained by USA Today. And we should mention that it's the first volley in a very long process. Ultimately, Congress decides on funding, right?
That's exactly right. Historically, Head Start has had strong bipartisan support. It's unclear whether Republicans now would stand up to support Head Start this time around. During the congressional break right now, Colorado's Head Start Association will lobby the state's delegation to fully fund Head Start.
Jenny, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I don't want us to lose sight that things are getting better. Each successive generation seems to be making progress in changing attitudes when it comes to race. Doesn't mean we're in a post-racial society. It doesn't mean that racism is eliminated. But you know, when I talk to Malia and Sasha, and I listen to their friends and I see them interact, they're better than we are. They're better than we were on these issues. And that's true in every community that I've visited all across the country.
Why did you reach out to TMJ for? You guys said if we have any problems or any concerns with something going on with this certain situation, reach out, and I did.
That's Everett Bass. His son, Everett Jr., went to Oak Creek East Middle up until last month, when Bass said he took his son out following multiple incidents of bullying.
After he felt like he did not get enough answers from the district, he reached out to us. Our Southern Milwaukee County reporter Brendan Jones has the story from there.
Back. Now put him all the way out. There you go.
Everett Bass says it's been a hard month for his family.
And I feel I let him down by not protecting him from those at Oak Creek School.
Bass says he moved his 12-year-old son EJ from EJ's mom's house in Nebraska to Bass's home in Wisconsin at the beginning of the year. He says within 2 months, problems started. A behavioral detail report from Oak Creek East Middle School shows on March 3rd, EJ and another student got into a physical fight. Bass says his son has autism, and classmates called him derogatory names while he was staring at a girl.
And the boy called him a pedophile. He said, "What, are you, a pedophile?" So my son stood up and was like, "I'm not no pedophile," and they got the exchange of words and pushing back and forth. And I guess my son kind of like slapped him or whatever.
EJ was issued a detention. 2 hours later, another behavioral report shows EJ was forced into a bathroom by a classmate to fight.
And the other boy grabbed my son, and another student drugged my son in the bathroom, and they beat him up and slammed his head against a wooden table.
Documents show the school called Bass to tell him about the bathroom fight and to let him know EJ would not face any consequences. Bass says EJ was given a Band-Aid for a scratch on his head and sent back to class. The next morning, Bass says he noticed something was wrong.
So he wake up next morning. I'm trying to get him ready for school. He like, "Who are you? Like, where I'm at? What's going on?" I'm like, "Everett, it's me, it's Dad. What's going on? You okay?" He said, no, who are you?" I took him to the hospital, and come to find out he had a concussion.
The report from the school says no medical service was provided after the injury.
So right now, the situation, no, I don't feel safe sending him there.
Bass showed me a letter from the district detailing a safety plan for EJ to return to school. It included adjusting EJ's schedule to reduce the risk of unintended contact, but adds the school cannot guarantee EJ and the other student will never cross paths during the day. Bass says he's keeping his son at home for now and completing schoolwork online, but he's now receiving truancy notices from the district.
This needs to change. Something needs to change about this.
The district declined my request for an interview, saying in an email, in part, our top priority will always be the safety of our students. Everett reached out to us at TMJ4 to get his story told, and if you need to do the same, you can reach me at email at brendan.jones@tmj4.com. In Oak Creek, Brendan Jones, TMJ4 News.
I can feel it deep inside, this black nigga's pride. I have no fear when I say, and I say it every day, every nigga is a star. Every nigga is a star. Who will deny that you and I and every nigga is a star?
Right now at 11, too vulgar to play on TV, a profanity-riddled racist rant that's going viral. The video has the attention of police in Contra Costa County and as a community in an uproar.
You see it there, repeated racist slurs caught on camera. NBC's Alyssa Gord explains how the community is reacting in the story that's new at 11.
That viral video was taken in the parking lot of the restaurant behind me. The owner of that restaurant says that he's now alerted staff to be on the lookout for the woman in the video and to not allow her inside. A video now shared by multiple accounts and viewed by millions shows a woman in a car repeatedly saying the N-word at another woman. She uses the racist slur so frequently, we are not sharing the audio.
Folks from not even just around Pinole and the Bay Area, but even Los Angeles got a hold of this video and was asking me, was this your city? And unfortunately, the answer was yes.
Pinole Mayor Cameron Sasai says it happened Sunday in downtown Pinole, in the parking lot outside the Pear Street Bistro. He says the person who filmed the video is in touch with the city and police are investigating this as a hate incident. Now he says the case has been shared with the Contra Costa County DA.
I think the big key here is that you need to do an investigation as to the authenticity of this video and also what led up to this incident, because not every racial slur leads to a hate crime.
Former prosecutor Stephen Clark says what happened before and after the video will help investigators determine whether a crime was committed. The owner of the bistro tells us this happened after brunch and that the woman seen in the car had been sitting at the bar by herself, but did not have alcohol there.
But I think the district attorney's office is going to look into this to see whether not only this will be charged as misdemeanor disturbing the peace, but whether there will be a hate crime enhancement.
We have not gotten confirmation of the name of the woman in the video. The license plate on the car is registered to someone who also faces several charges this year for stealing from a cosmetics store.
Regardless of the context, those words, those racial slurs, that racist anti-black rhetoric is not acceptable.
Community members are incensed and looking for answers. In Pinole, Alyssa Gord, NBC, Bay Area News.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Say that again.
Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
You can get extremism on the far left and you get it on the far right. It really comes down to what is the information that people are getting? What is the information that they are believing? And the guardrails fell off of that a long time ago in terms of helping Americans understand what the common set of sources are for factual information.
What's up, Chicago? I'm Erin Allen, and this is Curious City. Extremism is on the rise. A bipartisan think tank in D.C. called the Center for Strategic and International Studies looked at 30 years of data on domestic terrorism. They found that since 2019, the number of domestic terrorist plots against government targets motivated by partisan political beliefs was nearly triple that of the last 25 years combined. So in other words, since the year 2000, domestic terrorist plots have been most concentrated in just the last 5 years or so. Last episode, we talked about Chicago's history with extremist groups, how they terrorized specific groups of people and influenced housing policy in the city. This episode, I'm talking with Odette Yusuf. She's a national security correspondent focusing on extremism at NPR, about the rise of extremism today. You've been reporting on this beat for a long time. Tell me a little bit more about what specifically has changed in the last 5 years.
I mean, I've been on this beat for about 5 years, and I would say in that time, everything has changed. I think January 6th was a good example of how everything's changed. That, to me, really was a milestone in terms of how extremism looks in this country. Because, you know, I think we have long expected it to come out of small sort of cells or small groups. Mm-hmm. And here, it was just everyday Americans who had gotten really kind of radicalized to the point where they participated in the violence that day.
This is now effectively a riot. We have police at the Capitol.
It's just sort of an information jungle out there. It's very difficult for many people to discern what is true and what is not true. And that is such a critical component of what is pushing Americans farther apart from each other.
And this is the America we live in today. In terms of extremism, Odette says we usually think of it as fringe, but that's a part of a common misconception.
Yeah, I think the popular understanding about extremism has long been that extremism looks like defined groups. And that it looks like groups that commit physical violence, right? Mm-hmm. But I think this isn't really quite how scholars and researchers, right, have long thought about extremism.
When you're trying to identify extremism, Odette says it's less useful to think about specific groups and more useful to think about the umbrella these groups are under and the project they're trying to accomplish.
These are movements, and there may be many groups that are within a movement, right? So within the organized white supremacist movement, you see lots of different groups. There were neo-Nazi skinheads, the KKK. Today, we have groups like Patriot Front, lots of different groups, but they are all working towards the same project, right? Which is like a white ethno-state.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of more what we're trying to understand is what's the project, what's the movement.
Odette also says that people who believe in extreme ideologies often have a stark division in their minds about who's in the in group and who's in the out group.
You know, that's really key because you'll see that in these extremist movements, the definition of who is allowed to be in charge or even part of society versus who isn't is really stark. Again, looking at the white nationalist movement, like that's very clear. Like if you're white, you're in the in group. And if you're not, you're in the out group. And to achieve power, it means committing harm against those who are in the out group. Sometimes that is physical violence, right? Sometimes that also just looks like dehumanizing narratives about people in the out group. But sometimes it is conducted through policy, right? Like we think about the Jim Crow laws of the South, like these are laws that stripped people of rights of equal treatment under the law.
Yeah. I wonder if you can, just go through some of the areas where we're seeing more extremist ideologies and strategies permeating our culture in the United States today.
If we're looking at efforts premised on creating clear in-groups and clear out-groups, we are seeing right now from the very top levels of federal government efforts to strip out anything relating to diversity in public institutions, also putting levers on private institutions to do the same. That can fall into this framework. You know, we saw just a couple of years ago the reversal of Roe v. Wade. We saw women lose a constitutional right under the 14th Amendment. They had protection for abortion across the country. Now that is something that also could be considered as an extremist project, although we haven't typically talked about the pro-life movement necessarily as extremist. But there are some who would fall to that sort of definition as evidence that perhaps it has been mischaracterized for decades. You know, I feel like there are so many changes that are happening in this moment in the U.S. You know, we're seeing a lot of this attention being focused on genderqueer and trans people, restricting their ability to use public bathrooms, restricting their ability to participate in sports. All of this, I think, relates to ideologies that for a long time have been found in extremist movements, and now it's interesting that we're seeing them in policy.
Odette, you mentioned earlier that one can find extremism both on the far left and on the far right. What are some recent examples of extremist movements on the far left?
So, you know, a lot of my coverage has actually focused on far-right extremism for the simple reason that what we've seen from data and from statements in testimony that former FBI Director Christopher Wray has given before Congress, when we're thinking about the most, in their words, persistent and lethal threat here in the homeland, they're looking at something called RMVE, racially motivated violent extremists. The largest sort of most prominent sort of subcategory within that is white supremacist violence. Now, yes, I mean, when we look at the spectrum of ideologies that you might find, there is, of course, extremism on the left, as there is extremism on the right. But the focus that I've had has been on extremist violence that has been lethal. And that has been more common on the right than it has been on the left. Now, we've seen in sort of like the popular discourse a lot of talk about Antifa, which, is actually much more nuanced, I would say, than the way that it is often spoken about. There's no one organization called Antifa. So like that makes it a little bit complicated to try to wrap your head around what that even is. I have spoken with Chicago police officers who've told me that they think that the movement for Black Lives should be designated as a domestic terrorist group. And again, when I've talked about the violent extremism that I have focused on, we really are looking at the most violent pockets of extremism, which, as I mentioned, fall disproportionately to the right side of the political spectrum.
Zooming out a little bit, why do you think extremism has been talked about as sort of a fringe, on the margins, small individual group kind of thing, when in actuality it's quite different from that?
I think that extremism, like when we're talking about the ideologies, I think historically they have been on the fringe. The accepted range of discussion on so many issues used to be a lot tighter than it is now. And I think a lot of things have changed that. I think COVID was a more deeply destabilizing phenomenon than I think most people still even realize. What underlies a lot of extremist movements, they rely on conspiracy theories in order for people to get on board. And COVID was so destabilizing to people that I think a lot of them lost trust in institutions and got on board with conspiracy theories. And the thing about conspiracy theories is that it's a slippery slope. Once you start to believe one thing, you can get pulled further into another.
Odette Yousef is a national security correspondent focusing on extremism at NPR. Odette, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Turner Diaries. It sold over 500,000 copies. Who do you think is buying it? Eric Rudolph, the Olympic bomber, Wade Page, who shut up the Sikh temple, Larry Ford, developing typhoid and cholera, William Carr with the cyanide bomb, anthrax, ricin, botulism, C4, IEDs. I could go on like this for hours, and all of them are white supremacists.
Milwaukee.
For late May.
Tonight, newly unsealed federal records show the Waukesha West High School student accused of killing his parents had a larger plot to assassinate President Donald Trump and overthrow the U.S. government. State prosecutors say Nikita Kasap shot and killed mother Tatiana and stepfather Donald Mayer, living inside their house on Cider Hills Drive for 12 days while their bodies decomposed. Kasap, just 17, already charged with homicide in Waukesha County Court, is now being investigated for federal charges. FBI agents found what appeared to be a 3-page manifesto from Kasap calling for the assassination of President Trump in order to, quote, save the white race. Also saying, quote, it's time we lead the way to a system collapse. Do absolutely anything you can that will lead to the collapse of America or any other country you live in, end quote. The search warrant states Kasap followed a group called the Order of Nine Angles, which the FBI describes as a neo-Nazi racially motivated network that, quote, advocates for the use of violence and terrorism to overthrow governments and destroy modern civilization.
This is a group that believes the only way to sort of save the world is to burn down the current system.
Former Homeland Security counterterrorism expert and ABC News contributor John Cohen says these groups prey on people by sending violent videos and instructions.
He was downloading content. He was looking at information that provided insights in how to conduct these types of attacks, and he was in the process of acting on it until law enforcement disrupted his activity.
Federal investigators say he was speaking to multiple people on the online chat website Telegram, discussing paying in Bitcoin for a drone and a bomb. When police arrested him in Kansas, records show he had $14 grand in cash, his mother's jewelry, and his stepdad's gun. The federal documents show he appeared to think he was going to Ukraine after the murders, asking, quote, "So while in Ukraine, I'll be able to get a normal job and have a normal life, even when it's found out I did it," end quote.
See, black people sometimes think that they got some kind of, well, they don't really think it. Black people know better. That you got some kind of umbrella, that you got some kind of guardian angel that at the last minute is going to come to your rescue. You know, it's a whole historical reason for that type of thinking. But on the United Independent Compensatory concept, you're alone. In any type of volatile situation, when the smoke clears, I don't care if there's 1,000 people involved, when you are brought to the bench, you might say, or sent into the stockade or to the public arena or whatever it is, wherever you're sent, after the smoke clears, you're alone. You'll be speaking on your own behalf with nobody speaking up for you at all. Everybody else will either be silent or speaking against you. Because you did something that you shouldn't have done, even though you had the best of intentions. Now, any move that you make, you have to always keep that in mind. Whatever the outcome of what I'm fixing to do is, the bottom line is, when it all goes down, the people who want to help me won't be able to, and the people who want to hurt me are going to come down on me with both feet. And that's the way you have to think. I'm going to have to be able to handle all of this by myself. Because the people who want to help me won't be able to. Nobody's going to listen to them. And the people who want to hurt me, it's going to be a whole horde of them. And I'm going to be alone against them all. Period. You have to think that way. Because chances are too many black people have found out that's the way it is. That's the record. And if you might wind up, because of the way the altercation, you know, you breaking up the altercation the way it went, you actually had to kill the person, okay? Now you're talking about, well, am I willing to sacrifice everything? All of my plans for the future are down the drain behind of this 10-minute incident at that filling station. You've got to make that split-second decision. Because once you make your move, you've got to consider that this might be the most important move that I'm going to ever make in my life. Because you got so many other people to answer to. See, that's the key. Not just how you feel or the principles that you have, but are you willing to go all the way for a principle that you have in that instant? Not even knowing too much about what's going on, but just perceiving that something is happening here, that I got to take action. And you just got, you know, a couple of seconds to make up your mind. But that couple of seconds will determine your entire fate for the rest of your life. The code does not prohibit that. But the code says you do have to think about it, and you got to think about it real quick and make a decision real quick. And think about, hey, now this is a lifetime move that I'm making, and it's going to be worth it. That's the conclusion you have to come to. Once you're out with your jackknife and go over there just in case.
Within the past hour, 17-year-old Karmelo Anthony has been released from the Collin County Jail after posting bond. A judge reduced his bond this morning from $1 million to $250,000. He's facing a murder charge after police say he stabbed another teenager, Austin Metcalf, while at a track meet at a Frisco high school. Stephen Dial is in McKinney with more. Stephen.
Karmelo Anthony left the Collin County Jail in a suit but had nothing to say to the reporters before he got into that vehicle. The district court judge says that she looked at all the factors in this case, him not having a criminal history, and that led to her making her decision to reduce his bond. 17-year-old Karmelo Anthony was silent after bonding out of the Collin County Jail and being placed on house arrest.
How is this self-defense?
2 days after the family of Austin Metcalf buried their son, they were at the Collin County Courthouse for a bond reduction hearing Monday. Karmelo Anthony is accused of stabbing and killing Metcalf at a Frisco track meet earlier this month. The case has quickly become national news, drawing a lot of attention, resulting in threats and increased security at the courthouse.
Threats and, talk of race war and all kinds of insanity isn't good for, obviously, the Anthony family. It's not good for the Metcalf family.
Cameras were not allowed inside the courtroom, but we did capture the Anthony family arriving. His father, Andrew, testified in the hearing. District Court Judge Angela Tucker said that she's never gotten this volume of calls and had to have this level of security in the courtroom in her 13 years on the bench. Court documents say Anthony stabbed Metcalf during a fight. When an officer arrived, court documents say Anthony told the officer, "I was protecting myself." Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis spoke after the hearing.
The judge has made the call, and so what's important is what's next. And it's our job to be level-headed, to be fact-based, and to follow the truth wherever it leads.
Anthony's father testified he's taking a leave from work because of the incident, and his wife is a stay-at-home mother with 3 other children. During the hearing, the prosecution brought up the fact that more than $400,000 have been raised for the Anthony family, saying a reduction is not needed because they have the funds. A big question in this case will be, why did Anthony bring a weapon to a high school stadium? It's a question that was asked of his attorney.
That's an understandable question, but it's not something that, frankly, we're prepared to even go into.
Now, in the opening statement to the media from that interview that you just heard, he led with talking about self-defense. Again, the court documents mention self-defense. We'll have to wait and see how that defense will be made in court when things pan out. Now, according to the judge, the terms of the bond are house arrest and ankle monitor. She told him to stay off social media, and he has to personally call her bailiff every Friday morning, not his parents, but him. And there's a list of other things that is set, and if he violates that, he'll return to the Collin County Jail.
All right, Stephen Dial, live for us. Thank you, Stephen.
Our son deserves the same rights under the law that everyone is afforded to. He's been raised in a 2-parent home with structure, stability, love, and we put God first in everything that we do.
That is the mother of Karmelo Anthony speaking for the very first time publicly since her son was charged in the murder of Austin Metcalf. Anthony was released on a reduced bond on Monday. And as our Marvin Hurst explains tonight, Anthony's family says this is the first and also the last time that they plan to speak to the media or anybody openly about this case until the trial.
Good afternoon. My name is Kayla Hayes. I am the mother of Karmelo Anthony.
Her thoughts drafted out to read, but there is no script for what 2 families endure. Austin Metcalf, a murder victim. Police say of Kayla Hayes' son, Karmelo Anthony, at a Frisco school track meet in early April.
In wake of this tragic incident, our family has been under attack. Whatever you think what happened between Karmelo and the Metcalf boys, my 3 younger children, my husband, and I didn't do anything to deserve to be threatened, harassed, and lied about.
The 17-year-old held on a $1 million bond until Monday. It was lowered to $250,000, outraging many who became judge, jury, and misinformation on social media, even accusing the family of misusing their son's defense donations.
I don't know why we are being targeted and discriminated against before a fair trial. Our son deserves the same rights under the law that everyone is afforded to.
Anthony's family say they never used any money raised for their son's defense to buy an $800,000 home, an Escalade, hire a private security detail, and any GoFundMe in their son's name they say was fraudulent. The couple says that they have just been able to apply for access to funds raised for them on Gifts and Go. And the outcome of their son's bond hearing becoming problematic for Collin County Judge Angela Tucker, a Republican. According to Collin County deputies, there is an active investigation into social media rhetoric and calls to the judge's staff. Deputies also tell me that someone went so far as to post the judge's home address out on social media. And the FBI also confirming to me they are assisting with the investigation. But Anthony's family's first word to the community got put on hold by a surprise attendee, Austin Metcalf's father, Jeff. After standing with the media, he was asked to leave.
My 13-year-old daughter is afraid to sleep in her own bedroom because she's fearful of what may happen to her.
Normality seems fleeting for two families seeking justice.
We believe in the Constitution. We believe in the laws of this state. But those laws must apply to all of us, not just some of us.
From a draft no parent ever wants to see. Marvin Hurst, CBS News, Texas.
I'm getting in the elevator, and these two high school white boys tried to get on with me. And I just dove off. I said, y'all ain't killing me. I am scared of young white boys. If you white and under 21, I am running for the hill. What the hell is wrong with these white kids shooting up the school?
The press conference at 4:30 gave us a really big update about the person who they think is responsible for this.
Yeah, News 6 investigator Mike DeFore is joining us now live in studio with what we know about him tonight.
Authorities say he's 20-year-old Phoenix Ikner. He was a student at FSU. It appears he may have been a political science major based on his age. I'm guessing he was probably a sophomore there. Grew up right there in the Tallahassee area. Looks like his most recent home was just a couple miles away from FSU. And kind of the big shocker of this, after you get over the shock of the shooting, is the fact that his mother was a longtime sheriff's deputy right there in Leon County in Tallahassee. I think we have a photo of her right there, Jessica Ikner. She's been with the Leon County Sheriff's Office for about 18 years, we're told, and it appears that just last year was named Deputy of the Year in Leon County. So she is a fixture within that agency, and to hear the sheriff describe it today, her son was a fixture in the law enforcement community. It appears as a high school student, he was with what was called the Sheriff's Youth Advisory Council. I looked into this a little bit, and it's this organization that the Sheriff's Office put together where they can seek input from young people, build a rapport with young people in the community, and get their feedback as to what young folks are looking for in law enforcement. And this now 20-year-old Phoenix Ikner, son of the deputy, was a member of that council for a short time. I don't know if we have another photo queued up. There it is. This was a Facebook photo from the Leon County Sheriff's Office of Jessica Ikner. She looks like most recently served as a school resource officer. So you can imagine as someone who's in charge of protecting students on campus. I think she worked at a middle school, but how that had to be going through her mind. But with that Facebook page that you saw there, obviously with Facebook and social media, you get a lot of comments, and I can tell you right now there is some criticism. Whether it's warranted or not, we don't know, but speculation is rising of what did the mom know and how well did she secure her weapon, because law enforcement confirmed that the weapon used in this shooting, or at least was found on the scene, was the mother's weapon. Now, it appears that at one time it may have been her county-issued service weapon. Over time, though, law enforcement believes that that weapon may have been retired, and commonly law enforcement officers are allowed to buy their service weapons, and so authorities believe that now it was technically considered her personal weapon, not the one that she would be using on the job today. But nonetheless, there is now some criticism, whether warranted or not, questioning what the mom knew and how well she had protected that weapon. Those are just answers we do not have. The sheriff doesn't have. Law enforcement doesn't have. That will certainly be part of the bigger investigation into this shooting.
Do we know if there was a shotgun also found on campus? Do we know if that was her shotgun as well?
We do not know that yet.
Okay.
Yeah, and with that said, we've talked a lot about the tight-knit community that exists among law enforcement. And for someone who's been there for 18 years, this is a fairly small agency. They have 96 deputies. As you noted, she may have been Deputy of the Year recently. I mean, this cuts deep for that Leon County Sheriff's Office, who knows her so well and knows the FSU community so well.
Right, and we don't know. We do know that law enforcement had to confront this 20-year-old and actually shot him, wounded him. We don't know if those officers who encountered him on campus recognized him or knew who he was at the time, but that had to be going through their minds later when they found out that this was the son of the deputy. I mean, these type of shootings, no matter where they happen and how they happen, are always horrific. But now we have this new element of the shooter being the son of a deputy who worked right in that FSU community.
It's devastating all around. Mike DeForest, thank you for that.
I'm now joined by Reed Siebold. He's a senior at FSU who knew the alleged shooter. Reed, good morning to you. I'm so glad you're safe. I know you're overwhelmed, so thank you for taking the time this morning.
It's been a long 18 hours.
Yeah. First off, just how are you holding up? I understand you were barricaded in class yesterday as this all unfolded.
Yes, ma'am. You know, I'm learning to live with the new reality of being another statistic of school shooting. You know, yesterday, like you said, we were barricaded in our room after two people came in, running in, yelling about a school shooting. And from there, we jumped into what we had learned in high school to what to do. And we locked our doors. We turned off our lights. We were lucky enough to have locks on our doors. Many students in our building didn't. You know, that's why you're seeing the chair video, for example. But so we, you know, two people came in, and then we were locked down for about an hour. And in that time, we, you know, heard multiple people trying to come in. A few times it was the cops. The first time we thought it might have been the shooter. And we were sending our texts and calls to loved ones. Hey, I love you. I may never see you again.
Who did you text? Was it your parents in that moment? Who did you reach out to?
So I texted the extended family group chat first, and then immediately my boyfriend, because he was just off campus and he was freaking out, and I completely understand.
Where were you in relation to the shooting? When you say that you were in class, what was the proximity of your classroom to where the shooting was taking place?
For sure. So if you look at a map, you would see the student union. Directly across it would be the HCB building, and then I was catty-cornered. So I was a diagonal away, in between the student union and Strozier.
Okay.
So we were on the basement. We were in the direct line. When we were being evacuated, we saw blood in the hallways. We're trying to move forward in whatever way we can.
Yeah, a lot to process this morning and in the days and weeks to come. You're actually the first guest that I've talked with that actually knew the suspect. Tell me how you know him. Tell me a little bit more about Phoenix Ikner, the reaction you had when you first learned, you read his name, that he was the one being named in all this.
Sure, Marky. So I was watching the presser live, and I, you know, for hyperbolically speaking, I nearly had a stroke. I could not breathe. I was president of a political talk group at Tallahassee State College, which he was a member of, and he was known for espousing white supremacist and alt-right rhetoric to the extent where we had to ask him to leave. And it's my understanding that at some point he was allowed back after I, you know, came to Florida State. where he continued to push white supremacist rhetoric. He's known for doing this. I heard one account that he had referred to Rosa Parks as being in the wrong. So this is nothing new. This isn't anything that's foreign to Phoenix.
And all of the comments that you had heard him say before, I know that you kicked the guy out. You also heard him say multiculturalism and communism were ruining America, other things of that sort. Did you ever expect him to get violent? Did you ever see that side of him, physically violent?
No, ma'am. You know, I myself am conservative, and so I you know, he was into guns, but so am I. I everyday carry. You know, there wasn't anything that would truly indicate that he would do something this heinous.
I know that you're just in shock. Other members of the club, I know, are in shock. I know that your friends, you know, you've been rallying around each other since yesterday. But how do you move on from something like this? And how do you feel about Monday morning going back to class, Reed?
Honestly, we moved together. I keep a very tight crew of people together. I have to look to my support system, my friends, like I said, my boyfriend. And you were asking how we show up on Monday. I was wondering the same thing. I don't know how, to be completely honest. But hand in hand with those I love.
That if you want ultimate expression of white supremacy and the white supremacist mentality, and you want to put it in the form of one person that I would name, and that's something I very seldom do, it would be Jeffrey Dahmer. He's the ultimate expression of white supremacy. Everything that he was doing, working in a chocolate factory, the whole 9 yards, storing black male bodies in canisters of lye and alcohol and whatnot, got them in the refrigerator, and cannibalism and all of that, and calm, very methodical. Even when questioned by the law enforcement officers, very calm. Hannibal Lecter.
Frozen femurs in the freezer. Jeffrey Dahmer.
State murder case heads to trial next month.
Are there any outstanding issues at this point?
I don't believe there are that we haven't addressed already.
No, we've had good communication. We actually talked the last few days about this, and there's nothing that requires Your Honor's intervention.
Today was the final pretrial hearing in the case against Maxwell Anderson. Prosecutors say he killed Shade Robinson last April after a first date. Some of her remains turned up in the Milwaukee area and northern Illinois. Anderson pled not guilty in the case.
Gus T, Context of White Supremacy, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information with non-white people victims of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, April 19, McVeigh Day. Waco 2, I guess. Could have been Columbine. Easily could have been Columbine. But McVeigh Day, 2025, so I have been told. Information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. This is our weekly compensatory call-in. Dial in if you have observations, thoughts, questions, counter-racist suggestions. The number 605-313-5164, the code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. The number again, 605-313-5164, the code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Things to share. Then we'll get to folks who dialed in, see if we have any parents now that they've had even more time. Because I still don't think I've heard a number of non-white people share their views about the Karmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf situation in Frisco, Texas. I have not heard very many parents talking about, I discussed this with my offspring, or I asked my offspring what they thought about this whole situation, if they'd seen it, if they talked to their friends about it, has it come up in school. I've not heard that at all. I am exponentially more interested in that than hearing what victims of racism think about all this in Texas. One observation that I will point out, the gargantuan number of non-white people that seem to be very aware of the Karmelo Anthony situation in Frisco, Texas, the, what shall I say, infinitesimally small number of non-white people who seem to be aware of Sade Robinson being killed and dismembered by a suspected racist in Dahmerland. Not ancient history, but I just point that out in terms of, our friends, who is responsible for what information we know. So many white people have been talking about the Frisco situation. I think that's why we are aware of what's happening down there, and not so much Sade Robinson. I could be in error. There was a quote that stood out to me. It's related to Vietnam. It's from white suspected racist Sam Wilson. It's very, very difficult to dispel ignorance if you retain arrogance. I thought that was a gem in my application to racism, white supremacy. Hey, Fuller said still learning. It is very, very difficult to learn if you retain arrogance. And I think white people, racists, they encourage, they say, that, I'm asking for you, who's most informed about racism? Oh, Leroy and Lakeisha. Y'all are the PhD expert scholars. You and Chris Rock, of course, on racism, white supremacy. Don't nobody know nothing more about racism than y'all. No. And we believe that. It's staggering, the number of non-white people that I've heard who will arrogantly say, oh, of course I know all about racism. I'm black. Of course I know all about racism. They ain't read a sentence about nothing. I mean, they ain't read a sentence from Tim Wise, admitted racist. They ain't read a sentence from Malcolm X. Ain't read a sentence of Assata Shakur, Robert F. Williams, Negroes with not a sentence of nothing. But I'm all aware and informed about racism just because I was born black. Even Dr. Maya Angelou said that. Victims guaranteed qualified, but it is very, very difficult to dispel ignorance if you retain arrogance. Non-white people should not have any arrogance about our understanding of racism because we are dunces and, most importantly, still victims of white supremacy. Gus T, first and foremost. Next, McVeigh Day, almost Columbine Day. Thanks to Irie. Now, maybe a month ago, thereabouts, I was expressing reluctance about contacting Sheena Scarborough, Sade Robinson's mother, because it was even like some of the questions that we heard when we were listening in. They're talking about, how does it feel? They were talking to the folks black people in Wisconsin, right down the way from Milwaukee. They had the fire at the Beretta properties because they were using the space heater. The central heating wasn't working in the building where they warehoused all of these victims of white supremacy. And the reporter said, well, how did it feel? You said you lost everything in the fire. Now, how did that feel? Dumb question. Now, I'm not saying, that's one that qualified as that's what I mean. Not all questions are valid. I guess that's a valid question, but I mean, Jesus Christ. How do you think it felt to lose everything? certainly you did not go to journalism school and fill out an application and all that. You go to a fire, and that's the only question that you wrote down to ask, or that's even out of your 5 questions. How does it feel to lose everything? Beat it, man. Especially from a suspected racist, like, beat it. But with regards to Miss Robinson, how does it feel to lose your daughter and still not have her head after a year? How many times is she supposed to answer that question? That's what I said. I was like, man, I'm not really, add my name to the list of folks to come and pester her for her free time, and she could be grieving or trying to get some rest or whatever. Irie said, and it's so ghoulish to talk about all this, like, Irie said, there could be nothing you could possibly say that would be more ghoulish than what that race soldier did to her child. I pondered on it. Logical. Couldn't find anything incorrect about that, so I said, okay, we will give a jingle. We have chatted it up, Miss Scarborough. I've talked to her now a number of times. Just a wealth of information. She's so inspiring, like everything that she has endured over a year, and then still got to go through the trial, which, man, still got to go through that next month. She's just been, wow, indomitable in her spirit to get justice for her daughter. But in speaking to her about 2 weeks ago, she said, Brother Gus, why did you pay attention to this case specifically? You're all the way over there in Washington State. And I said, Neely Fuller Jr. Spell the name out, Neely, Fuller. He wrote these books, guest on the program bunches of times. And he picked out specifically, said if I had to identify a white person, the essence of what white supremacy racism is all about, Milwaukee's own Jay Dahmer. I said, what? What? She doesn't interrupt. She's just listening like, wow, what is this guy's name again? Neely Fuller. I said, he said all the time, replace white supremacy with justice. She said, replace white supremacy with justice. I like that. What's not to like? So that's one. The whole, how did you end up in Milwaukee? Fuller. So she comes back, next conversation, like a week or so later. She says, so why did you call me specifically? I said, I did not want to. And importantly, she had said at the beginning of the conversation, the press and reporters have been pestering me and calling me all the time. I just want them to leave me alone. It's been a year grieving over my child. I was like, ooh. And she said, oh, no, you're one too. You're got me again. She said, but yeah, why did you call me? Not today, just ever. And I said, man, I did not want to for exactly what you just said, being pestered by reporters and all of that. And I did not want to be in that number. And she said, I said, but I expressed these views live on the program, and I repeated her sentence exactly. Nothing could be more ghoulish than what that race soldier did to your daughter. And she said, true. Which is the same thing I said. Like mine's logic. Anyway, but that was also right on. And she said, thank Irie. You do not seem like the rest of the journalists, maybe because I did not ask, how does it feel to lose your daughter? Come on, man. Come on. And Gus asked, hey, did you get the prosecution witness list to see all these 247 people? You didn't? Let me send it to you. Have you looked at this list? Like, oh my, anyway. Incidentally, you heard, so they met yesterday. I think yesterday is the last pre-trial all to do. I spoke with Miss Scarborough a few days beforehand, and was thinking, you know, last details and all that. So it looks like this is going down. The trial, May 27, late May, Milwaukee. I cannot sit for all the reasons that you heard. Why am I going to be excited? I'm going to go see Nikita Kassup. Oh, you done hacked up some folks too? You hacked up your parents. Why? And you trying to start a race war. It's still cold in Wisconsin. I gotta hope I got heat that works. Like, it's no reason. I am excited about going to Milwaukee. I told y'all, if you find any good information about Milwaukee, share. Black brother shared a report. A black 13-year-old rescued a bus from going off a cliff in Milwaukee about a year ago, 11 months ago. That was the good news. Now, he did get on television. They had his privileged, raping black male father on with him. And they talked about how he learned how to drive and all that and rescued these children on the bus. But I mean, dang. That's the good news from Milwaukee. I sure am glad the bus full of Negro children didn't go off the cliff. The genius Irie said, Brother Gus, when you get back from Milwaukee, burn your shoes. I said, yes. I wouldn't have thought of that, but yes. If I make it back from Milwaukee, burn shoe. I might burn my shoes at the airport, like real talk. I don't think she said burn. Sorry, she didn't say burn. She just said trash them. I took it to the extreme of burn, but I might have to trash them once I land back at SeaTac and moving forward. New souls, new outlook on life, and wipe my feet. Lord, don't track that back into the 206. Any hoodles, much obliged to Irie. Invest if you think the cows is constructive. Already heard from Obese. Can say so again. Hopefully we'll be able to go, Gus T, to Milwaukee, investigate, even get some Dahmer research while I'm there, make it back safely, burn my shoes. Buffalo. What a year. And I might even be able to do the Buffalo Film Festival while I'm there. Best year ever. One miss the Milwaukee Film Festival. I'm going to miss it by days, and I mean days. I was so angry, but I'm not going to Milwaukee to watch movies. I'm going for the Sade Robinson murder trial. If I was going to be there, one film I would see mandatory. 40 Acres. What is 40 Acres about? Negro Canadian filmmakers. Now, they might be pretend black people, the ADOS folks and all that. They might not count. Got it. But these are black filmmakers in Canada. They made this movie. It is about Nikita Kassup succeeded. They had a race war in the USA, so-called, and a Negro family migrated to Canada. They start a farm, and white racist cannibals come to attack them on their farm. Are you out of your mind? That's the film. And I even had to pause and clown and say, wait a minute, they're having a film about racist white cannibals at the Milwaukee Film Festival? Bad taste. So sorry. Bad taste. Poor joke. Sorry. We'll do better. We'll not make any jokes like that when I get to Wisconsin. But really, I have a film at the Milwaukee. Anyway, if the black filmmakers are there, y'all research Dahmer before you. Anyway, 40 acres. Maybe I'll get lucky and it'll be at the Buffalo Film Festival. Let's see. The AI imposter scam, because we did hear Obama's voice, that is striking. One, it even reminded me that was predicted in Terminator, and that's like one of the really, what shall I say, minor technological achievements, that you have all of this technology that can replicate anybody's voice perfectly. You wouldn't even be able to tell the difference, and they have to have all those codes. When they said that, you have to have a code. They have all of that in Terminator. When you call somebody, you have to say the date. You have to have a code, and they do all these elaborate questions like, how how many times did you throw up the first night that we had Mad Dog 2020? What? Why you? What? Just answer the question. 5 times. Okay, that's you, Leroy. Look here, Leroy. Got to make sure the AI. Like, what? What? And they said, when I heard that previously, they said we need like 15, 30 seconds. I could have sworn in that clip they said if they got 5 seconds of your voice, wow. What kind? Wow. Woo. I guess talk to your children if they go off to college. Alrighty, so this will be our code. And then these will be the types of questions that we, you might even have to do it Terminator style. When you start, you don't say hello, you say the date. You don't say the date, and I'm hanging up the phone. Assuming you're a bot trying to get me, scam me, like, whoa, what kind of world? And you got racism on top of that. You don't even, come on, let's see. I might have to do that with folks calling in now. Might have somebody impersonating retired firefighter or whatever. Man. Let's see, they got a whole documentary on the housing appraisal, Our America Lowballed. What a name. That's the name for that documentary out in California where they were talking with the Curtis family, Ron Curtis, privileged black male, about how the appraiser came out and gypped them on their housing assessment, which is, I mean, they've cut down whole forests, writing books about how this has been long-running practice for attempted black homeowners. Let's see, and you can watch that documentary. It's online, Our America Lowballed. The segment on Odette Youssef. One, folks can go investigate. Do you think Odette Youssef is classified as white? O-D-E-T-T-E. Youssef, Y-O-U-S-E-F. Do you think she is accepted as white? Anyway, she does a lot of audio reports for NPR when they have information related to racism, white supremacy. She probably did some reports on Peyton Gendron way back in 2022 when the Tops massacre occurred. But it was for someone who allegedly does like serious journalistic work on a very serious topic, in my opinion, the most serious problem subject matter in the known universe, the system of white supremacy racism. Wars, battles, everything. Environmental racism can't get anything solved without this. She uses so many metaphors. It was immediate. She said, the guardrails have come off. What are you talking about? And even a metaphor that is seemingly innocuous like that. Frequently, when you're talking about guardrails, you're talking about some sort of child structure or toy or whatever the case may be, bumper cars or whatever, for safety purposes, generally for people who are still learning, might even be children, and we got to put guardrails on so they don't hurt themselves. That is not the way that we should be thinking about the system of white supremacy racism, and certainly not racially motivated violent extremism, if that's what they want to call it. Race soldiering, that's what we're talking about. That is not something that we should be minimizing, but it just continued. It was so much of that throughout. When she said she was talking about January 6th, because the title of that report was, is so-called extremism, is it still fringe? Whatever that means. They don't say is white supremacy racism, since they say what is at the center, the most cases of this violence is the racially motivated violence, beating up non-white people. If that's the case, what are we talking about extreme? Why don't you just call it racism, white supremacy, racist violence, white supremacist violence? Timothy McVeigh, Turner Dyer, why don't you just call it that as opposed to all this other, lying with the words? She said everyday Americans were out there with January 6th. Now, that's a massive one because she didn't say white people. And that's who it predominantly was. Show the facts. If I am in air, I know Brother Enrique. I know I'm trying to get my brother Enrique Torres shirt when I go to Wisconsin, but that crowd was not filled with Enrique Torres's. Not by a long shot, and you all know this. Rachel Powell, man. Rachel Powell. and the young lady that got killed out there. Got her. Now, I remember Rachel Powell. I can't keep up with all the white women from January 6th, but everyday Americans? And that's another minimum, even that, because you had a lot of trained military personnel that were out there as well. In my view, having trained military personnel participating in an insurrection, that is not, no, these are just everyday, come on. Come on. She said when they started, and they're talking about other forms of, you could view extremism, you could view it as extremism when they're talking about access to abortion and birthrights. Now, she didn't go into any details about that. I do not view just saying we don't want abortion, we need to change laws about that. I do not view that as so-called extremism. It's certainly extremist violence. Now, she could have pulled in, who I just mentioned with Timothy McVeigh, Eric Rudolph. Oh, Fort Benning race soldier bombed the Olympics and then bombing all these abortion clinics. Oh, okay. Now I got it, but she didn't do that. Or even if we're not bombing clinics, white genetic annihilation. White supremacists who say we need more white babies. What they said last week, the white pronatalists. We need more white babies, so we can't have you all out here getting these abortions and just terminating healthy young white men, white women, even white transgenders. We need our next generation of white people. All hands on deck, man. She didn't do all that. She just kind of threw it out there and moved on quickly. And even in my view, there was so much racial narrowing in that segment, which was Chicago Public Radio. They were giving kind of the Chicago focus of it all. There's so much racial narrowing in that white people in and of themselves constitute a terrorist organization against non-white people. Vietnam, and they focusing on USA, Vietnam, Patrice Lumumba. Matter of fact, when they were talking about terrorist violence in Chicago and housing practices, that's so-called everyday Americans right there too. Everyday white people who did all that. We talked about all of that in detail, packing them in. Bubbly Creek and all that, put the black people of south side of Chicago, poor areas with no ventilation so they could be sick and decrepit, same area that got hit really bad with COVID-19 in 2020. That's not everyday Americans. That is what it means to be classified as white. And even if you want to stick Chicago specifically, Dr. King said the worst racism I ever experienced was the everyday Americans in Chicago. But it was so much, she used so many metaphors and just being pussyfooting, really lying. Even, in fact, when she said the conspiracy theory, that was the other one, the ignorance. She said there's an information jungle. I had written them down, I had to even read because she had so many. She said it's now an information jungle out there. What? Are we in the Congo now? Like, what? What? What does that mean? There's an information jungle, and that for these white people who get pulled into this extremism, a lot of it is because they accept and believe these conspiracy theories. You know, it came through COVID-19. No. I think white people brag and tell me all the time that they are so smart, that I am so dumb and they are so smart. Don't they bell curve us all the time? No, you are not going to come back with another argument that is just, we got all these dumb white people and they believe all of these dumb lies that Elon Musk and the rest of the folks on TikTok are putting out. And so they take all these lies, and the next thing you know, January 6th. Next thing you know, Tops grocery store. Next thing you know, they're shooting up Florida State. No. And particularly when you look up a long history of this, you see the same behavior from individuals classified as white. No, this is not, we're white people, we're ignorant. No, even conspiracy theories. No. Lies. There is so much resistance to just saying lies. White people lie. That's the main part of racism, white supremacy. Lying. Even that little coward race soldier down there in Tallahassee, Panhandle, west part of Florida. I flex my Florida geography today because I was confused yesterday. But west part of Florida, Northwest, up in Tallahassee, where I have never been, so I can't be ignorant about that part of Florida. But that little Phoenix Ikner, mom in the deputy sheriff's office, officer of the year formerly, said that the Negroes were ruining his part of town. Now, they didn't include that in the segment that you all heard. They did include Rosa Parks and said Rosa was in the wrong. Rosa Parks been dead for 20 years. Rosa Parks was dead before he even got here. What do you mean, Rosa? What did Rosa Parks do to you, homie? Negroes are ruining my town. Now, I said, you all didn't hear that in the report, but I tweeted that yesterday. I read it yesterday. You know, look online. Look on my social. When I say online, look on my social media at Until Justice, and it's within the last 24 hours. You'll see the report, and they got the Rosa Parks part in there too. Negroes are ruining my town. Many white people for years, all the way back to Pitchfork Ben Tillman, he would do the same thing. Negroes are raping all of us. Oh, they're going to get all that. When they know they are lying. These are not conspiracy theories. These are lies. And I know these are lies. But if we can use them to practice racism, white supremacy, we're going to ride on this lie. White people do that, and they love to do that. And we don't call it lies. It's not conspiracy theories. It's lies. I don't even use the term conspiracy theory and all of that. Lies. In this context, it would be much more accurate. Just say they get online and get the line about all kinds of things. I even agreed with what C.O.W.S said about COVID-19 did have an extraordinary impact, all kinds of ways all around the world. That's true that we probably have minimized. That's absolutely true. One of the big things right in the middle of all that, though, was white people saying explicitly, oh, wait a minute, this COVID thing is some sort of Negro ailment? Oh, no, I ain't wearing no mask. I'm not doing no distancing. You don't tell me to wear no mask. You don't give me to get no vaccine. Now, is that extremism? We got a global health pandemic, and you say, I'm not even putting on a mask for no Negro. If this is a Negro problem, well, then let them niggers do whatever. We good now. We going to have a party. And touch a whole lot of folks, too. And don't even get over talking about no jab, either. And that's what they did. I'm not even getting the vaccine for a job. So I agree. The pandemic probably has been understated in the impact, but that is not why we have racially motivated violent extremism, because white people just got duped by Elon Musk and all this online poppycock and has led them to busting folks upside the head, and now I got to go shoot up Florida State. No, no, and no. This is what it means to be white. If anything, C.O.W.S, you should be quoting Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. End stage white supremacy. But it might just be that C.O.W.S is classified as white and she's practicing racism too. That could be. Let's see. The Frisco, and I don't know what the, oh, wait a minute, there was one more. Wait. All of this talk about fringe, I forgot. I shouldn't be the one quoting Bill Clinton. C.O.W.S should. She's the expert. Bill Clinton said, Timothy McVeigh won. 30 years removed from the ashes of the OKC bombing Alfred P. Murrah building, 168 casualties. President Clinton said Tim McVeigh won. He pointed at January 6th. He didn't say those are everyday Americans. He said this is widespread now. Everybody thinks like Timothy McVeigh now. Do you see January 6th? Woo. Timothy McVeigh, everywhere. Yep. And Timothy McVeigh said that he won as soon as he did all of this. Way back 25, 30 years ago, whatever. He said he won then. On the way to the electric chair, or however they killed him, gas chamber, however they got rid of him. Bill Clinton didn't acknowledge that McVeigh was the victor until about 25 years later. Look, after January 6th, you know, this was real recent, him looking back saying, dang, McVeigh won. End stage white supremacy. And Turner Diaries. Everybody, this would be, if you have not read the Turner Diaries, this would be a great time to get that book. Anyway, I don't know what the white ethno-state is. She missed that as well. No idea. Judge Angela Tucker is black. I don't know if people followed, but from the Frisco, Texas stabbing Karmelo Anthony situation, the judge that reduced his bond from $1 million to $250,000. Black female judge Angela Tucker. Oh my. And she was one, she said, I have never had so much feedback, and we got to get all this added security and threat. And they doxed her, put her address and such online. Oh my God. She could not be invited to no cookouts for this summer. Like, we doing any family reunions or whatever. Like, whoa. Yeah, Sister Tucker, yeah, I know Sister Tucker, and we love you something terrible, but the heat is a little much right now, and we can't afford security like that. We have to wait and see how things go next year. We're gonna send you some ribs, and we got some grilled zucchini, but yeah, you can't. Christmas ain't looking too good either, because they didn't put our address out there. They're like, we'll Zoom you. And then his family, you heard the same thing where they lied and threatened the family, and they got to get man. All of that. You heard Neely Fuller Jr., we were talking about counter violence. He said to pull out the jackknife, like he said that yesterday. Fuller talked about all of that. Anything related to counter violence, and these racists do whatever, and you got to respond, it's looking like it's going to be some counter violence. All of that should be thought about, talked about well in advance. Way in it. That's why I said, so all these black people that I've heard talking about this case, you've talked about this with your offspring? What has that conversation sounded like? Have your offspring been talking about this? Have you asked them questions to see what do they think about all this? How would they have responded in all this? Did they hear their peers and classmates talking about all of this? I would love to hear that conversation just to see how they're processing all of this, and even attempted counter racists. Some of the folks that I've heard talking about this, I've just looked, and what I said at the beginning, man, we are not very informed about racism, white supremacy at all, because I see people commenting as though they are ignorant or surprised at how all of this would unfold, particularly if it had not been Judge Angela Tucker. If it had just been some regular old white woman, man in Texas on the bench, maybe the bond gets reduced, maybe it doesn't. But that's what you're supposed to expect. Lying on the family, threatening you, maybe you get shanked in prison, definitely going to get tried as an adult, all white jury, $5 million bond, all of that. You're supposed to expect all of that in advance. Why? System of white supremacy. That's what that means. That's the way that conversation would have to go. And if it's not going to be that, then whoa. Lots of in-depth. I think we even said last week, like, man, anywhere I got to take a knife to go, because they might be ready to act up and what have you. Man, count me out, especially if it's going to be white people acting up. Like, woo, I'm good. I already know you're going to have to answer to these white people in Texas. Man, you got anybody friends with Jerry Jones? He owns the Cowboys, the brain damaged football team down there. And I believe their practice facility is in Frisco, unless I've been mistaken. But, man, can we at least get us some security, Mr. Jones? I know you can at least do that. Like, good God, they're going to kill us down here in Frisco. Man. The last thing I will get in, I guess I can get in double, because it's the same thing. I am supposed to go to Milwaukee, even though I don't want to go, just because I would not have paid attention to that case at all about Nikita Kasap, the 17-year-old killed his parents and all that, and then they said he was trying to do the same thing. I'm going to start a race war. We need to kick this thing off to save the white race. What? Save the white race from what? Incidentally, this is from the white lad who killed his parents. White, but whatever. Save the white race. From who? From what? You? Glad they got you in custody now, but I mean, dang. And that's the one from last week. Remember, say, he told his peers at school he was going to do this. And the journalist, he didn't ask, hey, Nikita, how did it feel to shack up with your parents? He didn't ask that all over that. I might be interested in that one. He asked, did any of his classmates snitch on him about all this? No. Masters of name calling, masters of no snitching, master deceivers, all one in the same. Racist man, racist woman, racist child. And like I said, the same thing my sick white brother in Tallahassee, Phoenix Ikner, then he talked to his white classmate down there, Florida State Seminoles, their lame brain damaged football team, Deion Sanders rolling over in his grave. He said, we were at the technical college, and he said that they had to kick old Phoenix Ikner out the club because he was expressing all his white supremacist views. Whoa. Rosa Parks in the wrong and all that, and they said they kicked him out, but they invited him back. They kicked him out. Oh, shucks. You still there. Come on, Phoenix. Come on, we gonna ride with you. And then the white classmate, he said, now, you know, he had all these right-wing and thoughts and such, you know, hey, I'm a conservative. Pause right there. What does that mean? That's when I wish the interviewer had. Whoa. What does that mean? What are you conserving? He continued. He said, and he was all about the guns and such. You know, hey, everyday carry. Whoa. Are you packing heat right now? Well, you know, they just shot up the campus. You never can be too safe. Great equalizer. That even right there, that little snippet from that interview, that's what I mean. We were talking about Columbine, and this is one and the same. Columbine was supposed to be today. We just a day off. It was supposed to be today. They were going to outdo Tim McVeigh. Blow up the whole school. Blow up the whole town. Blow up the whole world. Eric Rudolph. White people talked about that, too, in Vietnam. Talked about what? Blowing up the whole world. Filled with non-white people. Anywho, but I wish they had asked. Conservative? What? You carry every day? What? Are you carrying right now? Why? When? How long have you been packing heat? Jesus Christ. And now, how would that interview have gone? Hey, I believe in gun rights. I carry every day too. If they had been talking to Al Sharpton, Leroy, Devontae. Anyway, that's what I said. White people are dangerous. I even said that with the Frisco situation, like you pull out a knife and then you bump into one of the carry everyday white boys like, oh my God, like, woo, I have made a really bad decision, which we do often. We, non-white people, victims of white supremacy. The number 605-313-5164, the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Brother say, you got your real ID ready so you can get on the plane so you don't get stuck out in Wisconsin? I'm flying on my passport, man. Not have time to go hang out Department of Licensing and all that and harass me and wait in line for 15 hours. Flying on my passport. Milwaukee and Buffalo. They cheated me out of my chance to go to Canada, then they probably won't even let us across the border now since Trump and the tariffs and all that. So I will compromise and use my passport to fly. 605-313-5164. 5164, the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. That is real. If you do not have your real ID, I would get it, even if you don't think you're going to fly anytime soon or what have you, just in case. I would not delay too much. Go ahead, or at least get your passport. If this will motivate, go ahead and get your passport, and then you're good for 10 years. Folks who dialed in, hand up. If we heard, folks, did you talk to your offspring about the Karmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf situation? Let us know. What did your offspring say? What did you tell them? That would be grand to know, especially from black children. Let's see. Folks who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open. Proceed.
Greetings, Gus. How are you this evening?
Right poorly.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments because you told me to call in on the Saturday show about the movie soundtrack to Coup d'etat. I was rightly hurt by it. It was very disturbing. Informative, I must say. It was informative, but it was very painful to see that victims continue to align themselves in order to kill a man who they had basically taken, had him in a box. He couldn't do it. They stripped him of his power, and yet just because they wanted to murder him, they did it anyways, and they used us to do it. And that's just the hurtful part, that we like Mr. Fuller say, we are dangerous, and we can't be trusted in groups of getting along with each other. It's just, and to see that on the continent is just horrible. It's even more painful just to know that us and a group of us on the continent can't even get our acts together. But before I was meaning to get in earlier. I just got through watching the movie Sinners. I would suggest you watch that.
This is not the TV program. Again, we do not have TV programs. I've said that emphatically for years. No TV.
Right.
No TV.
That's a movie.
No TV. No Area 8. No Area 8. No YouTube. No Netflix. No Hulu. No streaming. No Area 8.
Right. But it's just like the movie La
Do you have anything that is not related to other TV? We got soundtrack to Coup d'etat, which I talked about right on. Do you have anything else?
Right. Well, there's only reason why I'm suggesting that one for watching.
Do you have anything else other than entertainment to talk about?
Only that. But there's some interesting parallels. That's all It has a parallel.
Oh, okay. Much obliged. Thank you kindly, sir. For folks who say I'm being rude about that or what have you, that may be, and that's fine, VGQ. But this is my platform, and this is a rule that I've had like forever. No Area 8. No sexual intercourse. Area 8. No sexual activity and entertainment. That's not Area 8. It's entertainment. I've said this for years. And it strikes me because we just listened to 60 minutes of news reports. Or I just played them. Maybe y'all didn't listen. You could have been watching Braun and Luca. But we just had 60 minutes of news reports of things from all over the world, which included the Congo. And that's what we got about that. But things that we watched on TV, that's why I said, like, there's something, like, massively incorrect about that. Just sitting and watching TV, and that is the totality of our being serious and studying. No. pay attention to the news. Let's pay attention to things that are happening that is way more. But like I said, the Congo was in the news clips today when they were talking about what's happening right now with things that also were in soundtrack to coup d'etat about them going in to cause all of this disruption. Exactly what you said, how they go in and we can manipulate. We can pick out certain non-white people to support. Maybe we give them guns. Maybe even give them targets to point those guns at. And then we go and we get all that coltan, cobalt. I mean, that's so much in the Congo. But we just heard that was just today. That was just today. Like, it cannot be the only way that we're going to get serious and talk about something as if they put it in a movie. Like, that just, come on now. We can do better. We can do better. Other folks who fall, you have nothing related to television to talk about. The only reason that I allowed soundtrack to coup d'etat is because, dang, I've been talking about that for a year. I've been talking about that film for a year. And I will add, I've been talking about that film. We read 3 books from that film. Andre Bloom. And she said in the book, she said exactly what he just said. Our worst enemies are Africa. She was Africa's worst enemies are Africans. That's how he said it. BGQ, she does have a white parent. But how can that be? No. The worst enemies are white people. They're just very skilled at being able to manipulate non-white people because we are in such a pitiful, pitiful position. It was so many non-white people starving on the continent at that time. Like, oh my God. Like, man, woo. You want to starve or you want to kill Patrice Lumumba? Make a choice. Oh yeah. We got lots of starving black people to ask. So, I mean, make a decision. Other folks who dialed in, if you have commentary to share that is not a television show, proceed.
May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call, Gus, and greetings to all the COWS listeners and callers. I want to apologize ahead of time. I'm under the weather, so hopefully everyone can hear me clearly. I want to just first start off by talking about the clip you played about the death penalty. I believe it was saying it was being reinstated under the Trump administration. I was thinking this could be a form of entertainment that white people are bringing back, and I suspect that the people who will be disproportionately targeted by this death penalty being reinstated will be black males. I believe even last year, there was a black male by the name of Marcellus Williams who was sentenced to death in last year, and there was evidence to believe that he was not guilty of the crime that he was convicted of. I will move on to the next bit of information, a clip you played about the, I guess, Nikita Kasip, I guess the guy's name is, the teen who killed his parents and lived with the bodies for a brief period of time before having a conversation with someone from, and again, it was confusing to me because I heard the person he was having a conversation with was from Russia, not the Ukraine, but the clip I heard it said Ukraine, so that kind of confused me a bit. No surprising that he was taken into custody alive, even after being on the run and killing 2 people, his parents no less. What was interesting about it that I think you brought it up as well, about this is his goal is to quote unquote start some race war and to have cause a total collapse of the system. And he, I guess, called for the collapse of all systems just to tear it all down. This reminds me of the report you played last year and the year before about those power centers being targeted, and it was believed to be that this was a targeted attack to cause some kind of quote unquote race war, even though the system of racism and white supremacy is the race war. It was also said he also called for the assassination of President Trump.
Again, just to, I guess, stir up white people who are sitting on the sidelines. This is my opinion, my conjecture, to join the, I guess, the assault on non-white people. Even though non-white people wasn't specifically stated, he said a race war. But he's first people he called to kill was his parents, and next he's calling to kill Trump. It could just be white degeneracy, in my opinion, as well. Well, it's all just white degeneracy, but. And also, I thought about that case. If he was being a caller for all this stuff to happen, why didn't the federal government, go in and arrest him prior to all this happening? That's my question about that. There was a clip you played about the technology, using a bit of our voices, just a small snippet of it, and it could just replicate it and use it for means of extorting money or all types of criminality. I'm not sure, but I believe people said it was like $3 billion. I could be wrong. That has been defrauded already from something like that. I'm not too sure. I could be incorrect. But white people know this. White people create the technology, and then they're surprised with, they're surprised with how it's being used, and surprised. And it's not surprising to me that people who are investigators, federal government, or whoever else, don't know how to stop it. They just somehow conveniently don't know how to put, mandates or controls or checks and balances on any of these things to make sure that it's not being used in this way. But they're developing the technology and distributing out to the public. The land, redistribution clip in Zimbabwe, but there was also a report about the Congo mafia getting out later. But that one right there stood out to me because I never heard of in the Zimbabwe when they did acquire the land back from the invaders, the Dutch invaders, I believe, when it was Rhodesia or whatever. I never heard of it being violent, them taking the land back from them. But this is somehow, they're saying they're going to pay reparations of $3 million to each invader who shouldn't have been there to begin with. To me, it also reminded me of what happened with Haiti after their war to fight for freedom, and how they had to pay France, quote unquote, reparations to keep from being invaded again. And as you can see with Haiti today, it is in total disarray, partially because of the economic issues that it faced from paying those reparations back to France. I'm thinking that the new leadership in Zimbabwe, that I guess they're trying to, make, for lack of a better term, nice with the rest of the white nations so they can get trade up. But I just don't think this will work out in their favor in the long run. That's just my opinion. The clip about the father whose child was attacked in the school, the child with autism, that was very saddening and hard to hear. A black child who was just there to learn, who doesn't really understand what's going on, to be assaulted like that and to suffer a concussion. I mean, if people don't know what a concussion is, it's a bruise on the brain. I mean, he could have died from that. I personally have a nephew who has a physical disfigurement, and he does not go to public schools. He is homeschooled right now just for that very reason, so he would not be targeted by other children who I don't even want to comment on the children, but we use a lot of violence against each other, because of our confusion. When I guess it was a Oded Yusuf, I believe. You posed a question about is this person a non-white person or a white person? Her skin is very, quote unquote, swarthy, and her hair is very, very dark brown. I'm going to err on non-white, but I could be wrong. Her report about the quote unquote extremist movement, every time there's a report of white people going into doing something violent, in my opinion, criminal, they like to, they don't ever focus the point regarding just white people as this is total pathology, and this is a total malady to the whole nation. They always try to excuse it away with either the term ignorance or they're quote unquote confused about it, reports. And that's interesting because the white people are confused and then they get let off the hook. Black people are ignorant of the law all the time, and we held to the highest standards, incarcerated at the highest rates. It's totally absurd to even hear things like that. And then I believe it was also the same report that the reporter tried to compare. Well, she said that police would say BLM would be extremist organization, even though I heard of no one being killed from that organization. I think that's a false comparison. And ultimately, BLM just means Mr. Medical for black people, in my opinion. The report about the Metcalf case, I'll just say this, regardless of the outcome of the case, I believe the 9 people involved will have to deal with this for the rest of their days or until the end of the system of racism and white supremacy. But it did remind me of the affluenza guy, Ethan Couch, from a few years back. He killed 4 people in a drunken hit and run, and he only got sentenced to 10 years. Reported here he only did 2 and was released, and then violated that probation, and people can read more about his case. And the FSU shooter, Phoenix Ikner, he killed 2 people, I believe, injured a couple people. What was, and not surprisingly, again, this one, again, killed people, taken into custody alive. The person that was being interviewed, I'm not sure if that was a student or a teacher, I believe his last name was Reed. When they asked him, hey, he was spouting all this white supremacist rhetoric, he was disruptive, he got dismissed or kicked out of school for a period of time. Do you suspect that this could have happened? The guy said no. And it goes back to what you said, Gus. White people don't snitch on other white people. And with that, I'll mute my line. Thank you for taking my call.
He may have been being self-serving, as they say, because he said, hey, everyday carry, man. So if he's doing the interview, and I got my .357 Magnum in my lap right now, so I can't really say that, yeah, I'm going to be careful. I didn't expect what you mean? Phoenix been cool the whole time, except when he got kicked out of that club, Anywho, and trying to be slick, victim, Phoenix, unless I'm misinformed, he did get shot. Now, he is still with us, land of the living, but I think he did get shot, taken into custody. Now, even I think they questioned the news report. They said, do you think they recognized him when they shot him? Might have been that they recognized him and he got a flesh wound, as opposed to if this had been Deion Sanders shooting up the campus, might not have been with us. Just saying. That was Richard Pryor at the beginning, the report talking about Zimbabwe. He was talking about that period of violence in Zimbabwe, because I think that went on for years. I'm not an expert about that part of the world or anything else, but the little that I know, I think that went on for like years. The fighting and strife, out and out so-called race war white people and black people killing one another. And that's how that land was reacquired by black people that they're now paying the white people back for. Yeah, an excellent comparison to the area of the world known as Haiti. And I think in so many ways, because both of those areas have continued to be punished economically and through other refined means of racist sabotage to make sure that these, matter of fact, Zimbabwe, we just studied. I'm not totally ignorant about Zimbabwe. Why is that? One, we just had the white mayor of Zimbabwe as a guest on the program at the beginning of last year. 16 years, cows, David Coulthard. We talked about Stevie Wonder, how Stevie Wonder helped him see that the Negroes who work on his property, that they were not just beasts, that they were human beings. We love you, Stevie, still with us. But I know about David Coulthard because he was an attorney for Mike Swango and won his case for anti-white bias in Zimbabwe. Reading more important than watching television, because I've seen bunches of documentaries on Mike Swango. Very few of them talk about that. Some of them do, but most of them do not. The book goes into great detail about that. And then we got to talk to the white mayor who won his anti-white bias case in Zimbabwe, where how many people you kill in Zimbabwe? Who knows? And he never went to jail for any of that. The only people he went to jail for, the white people that he killed here. Zero criminal prosecution for any of the black people he killed in Zimbabwe, and they don't even know how many black people he killed in Zimbabwe. He was about to get reparations too. He won his case. Mike Swango was about to get reparations too. Anti-white bias. Blind. See there? That title of the book on Michael Swango. What's the title of the book? Blind Eye. No, man, you lied and willfully allowed a white killer to go on and continue killing for years, decades. You lied, willfully withholding information, and whatever. Man, woo. That does not qualify me for being an expert on Zimbabwe, but I do not get an F on Zimbabwe because Michael Swango. I even know a Zimbabwean journalist, Foster Dungozi, did all that work on Michael Swango. Woo! I do not get an F on Zimbabwe because of Mike Swango. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, if you have commentary to share, line should be open.
Greetings, everyone. You can go ahead, sir. Thank you, sir. Miss Odette Yosef strongly appears to be a non-white female. I'll just use the non-white black jargon metaphor. High yellow comes to mind. She looks as though that one of her parents is a white person. That's my answer on the. I think you asked about what we thought about the racial classification of the reporter. Karmelo Anthony. I don't know how to say it correctly, but I'll just take a chance. Unfortunately, it's full of a lot of lessons for young black people, teenagers, even children who are not teenagers, who are younger than teenagers. Therefore, when we open up sessions again for the DCS program, we will be sharing information or our thoughts on the subject I'm not an expert on it, but I would guess that it's probably going to be in the public attention for quite a while, and so therefore it'll be available to be able to open conversations with young black males on developing a code on what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. Myself and Mr. Clark we have been basically making a plan of relations with the young fellows when we start another session, which I think would be in August. And stay tuned. That's basically the only thing I have to say this Saturday. Thanks for listening.
Love it. Love it. Share it. See what they, think. I hope some of the young folks have been paying attention to all of this, so you can see what they think about it, how they would have responded, in that situation. Have they heard other people talk? Have their parents talk to them about all of this? Like, love it, love it, love it, love it. Yeah, and I'm sure you and Mr. Clark will have lots of great, logical, helpful, constructive things to share with them. There are lots of lessons. Man, think past today. Like, now, me doing this today. Now, what does my Sunday look like? And then what does next weekend look like? Just try to take a moment, do a little thinking. I did want to say really quick before we get our caller at the courthouse in Florida, the previous male caller who was with us, he mentioned, might have been victim, where he mentioned the bullying of the 12-year-old black child, privileged, with autism. That was at Oak Creek East Middle School. Where is that? Milwaukee County. Now, that clip specifically, man, that's why I said maybe I was supposed to go to Milwaukee, even though I don't want to go. I would not have paid attention to this at all if I was not going to Milwaukee. Oh, it's so close. Ugh. You can pray for Miss Scarborough, and then if you have time, you can pray for Gus safely to Milwaukee, Buffalo, and back. Okay. But that case, Everett Bass Sr., black male, attempted father, privilege, talking about his son EJ, and they're at Oak Creek East Middle School. They said he got into a fight. His son has autism. They said he was staring at a female girl, and they called him a pedophile. I would love to know, the female that he was staring at, was this a white girl? It would not improve the situation at all if she was non-white, but just, it would be, I would like to know. Anyway, it continues. So they call him a pedophile. I'm not a pedophile. It's a logical response. They get into an exchange, pushing back and forth. They go to detention. Grabbed his son, gets dragged to the bathroom. They slam his head against a wooden table. He gets a concussion. When we had Dr. Jessica Wallace as a guest on the program during the Super Bowl where the Eagles lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, they did not have the exciting whites on the roster that year. That was 2023. She said that black boys are more at risk for concussions and more at risk for concussions off the football field. And I thought that was so striking because I was in her research and we talked about that. And I said, do you talk to black boys about this when you go out and give your lectures and such? She said, oh, no. I give that information to the black people in the so-called Negro community because they're more qualified and they can do that. I said, I think you should tell them that. Like, don't hit black people in the head, especially children, because their brains are still developing. Do not hit black people in the head, especially do not slam black children's heads into blocks of wood or the wall. Jesus Christ. Like, what in the... I am so glad I am not a parent. I'm so... And now, this is the same area where they just said, oh my God, we got to send the children home. Lead has infected all the schools. Oh my Lord, what are we going to do? I'm so glad I'm not a parent, and I'm so glad I do not live anywhere close to Milwaukee. Caller at the courthouse in Florida, east of Tallahassee. Oh, got it. Got it. There we go. Sorry about that.
Yes, sir. No problem. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners, and callers. I was thinking about that. I think that was about an appraiser or something like that, or about how I can't remember the details of it, but I think they were awarded money. Maybe I think they did like a lawsuit or something. I found that very interesting. Because I know we have a property appraiser's website on the job that we refer to, and it sounded like the guy was saying the person that the female he's in a relationship with has some experience in that area. I could be wrong, but that I would consider to be something helpful to him in that situation. The audio segment about the black child being bullied or mistreated, and just to hear, I had never even heard nothing like that, where the parent was describing the child as saying, like, who are you? I don't even know who you are. Like that was that was very unique to hear that. And I think the guy said he felt like he had disappointed. I think maybe that might not be the right word. He said he felt like he had disappointed or failed the child. I thought about that quote. The joke is on the offspring. The segment about the interview about the extremists and how they do try to do that kind of focal pointing type of just set a focus on that certain group of white people that, they have to express views on white supremacy, and they'll just barely say white supremacy, I guess, depending on certain things they say. And then I did notice how the guy they were interviewing, they said he knew him, said, oh, I'm conservative too, and I'm about the gun ownership or whatnot. And it just seems like, in my opinion, I think he agrees with what his views are. But like you mentioned, until he went out and did that violent act, it seemed like he tried to in some way separate himself, I guess, not to align with him, I guess. And the segment about, I'm trying to remember, about the guy up in Wisconsin and how they're saying race war, it seems like they really do tend to use more of the accurate terms, and like white people in general don't practice racism, white supremacy every day. And I did see a segment on the Phoenix Ikner guy, and how they tried to, in my opinion, make it look like he's some kind of a victim or he's innocent. He was abducted. They want to try and use the term stepmother. I noticed that. And he was taken to Norway. And I thought when I seen Norway in that Breivik, I can't remember that name, Anders Breivik, I think I could be saying the wrong name. And he killed all of those people. I think that was in Norway. And they didn't mention his white supremacist views on the news reports that I saw closer to here. And other than that, that's all I have to share. Thanks for allowing me to speak.
Much obliged, caller at the courthouse. Anders Breivik did indeed kill all those people, dozens. It was like approximately 80, because as a matter of fact, it's McVeigh Day. Part of it was a bombing, and then also McVeigh Day, Anders Breivik then went out and just got his gun and just started slaughtering children. Again, white people do not care about children. And he killed all those people about racism, wrote his manifesto and all that, just like Tim McVeigh and, the rest of them. Bomberman, got to go do some killing. The report in Oakland, California, Jonestown, where they talked with the Curtis family, and that documentary, Our America, lowballed. Something about that title, like, Anyway, Welsing moment. So, their house appraised $254,000 lower than what it appraised for earlier that year. $250,000 difference. Ouch. But to his point, caller in Florida, they said document so many times in that segment. Man, we could have been on workplace racism. That is why. Document. But specifically, they included there we go. So we got the lower than expected appraisal forced the refinance application to ultimately fall through. Now, what are the consequences of that? The Curtises believe that racial bias was a factor system of white supremacy. Ron Curtis joined our Julian Glover, black journalist, on Midday Live with his reaction to the settlement agreement. He gave advice for other families facing appraisal discrimination in the Bay Area. My advice would be to document and gain as much support as you can, and make sure you reach out to Fair Housing Advocates, FAIR, of Northern California, Curtis said. He also recommended reaching out to a real estate professional who may be able to help. The Curtises had access to Multiple Listing Service, MLS, because Ron serves as a licensed real estate broker, and Dominique at the time was in the process of training to become an appraiser. So absolutely, they both had lots of unique information because of their careers and lived experience, that yes, they were in a great position to address all that. But I mean, even still, all the time and energy, because it said they had to file like a 60-page rebuttal. How long did it take to write all that out? What's the cost? Because a lot of times, he said, working at the courthouse, a lot of times they have court costs. You can't just go in there and give a piece of paper and, oh, okay, no problem. Oh, we don't give out copies for free either, so how much time and energy does all that take? Then you got to go and do the settlement and get an attorney. And then we had plans. Application failed, got rejected because of all this racism. We were supposed to be doing something else. Do we not get to do that at all now? Is it delayed? Like, come on. The time and energy cost of white supremacy racism cannot be overstated. It cannot. That's why I say all the time there should be an urgency about solving this problem, because this will continue to happen again and again and again and again. And it hadn't been that these happened to be just two unique Negroes, where they study, had NDB Connolly, same thing. He was a guest on that program. He wrote the book that's about racism, white supremacy in Florida, specifically A World More Concrete. It happened to he and his wife. And I think it was about the same difference in appraisal. It was about $250,000 in the difference of appraisal amount. And they went to court and all that, and it just happened that, you did this to a black dude who wrote a whole book, a black professor, PhD, who wrote a whole book about white supremacy, racism, and specifically in housing. And his wife has a PhD, also talks and writes about racism. I mean, worst, same thing with the Curtises, worst possible group to do this against, where they might be informed enough they could write that rebuttal. They might have a few nickels where they could get an attorney and go and, see if they can get a settlement and all that. But I mean, you got a lot of black people, they wouldn't have those resources. $250,000. That's another one where I say too, like, oh my goodness. Like, I think a victim just wrote a book, and they were talking about how their suggestions for how non-white people can close the economic wealth gap, so-called, in the system of white supremacy racism. Victims guarantee qualified, everybody can make their suggestions. My view, it's not possible while we're on the plantation. As long as you have a system of white supremacy racism, white people are going to have exponentially more finances than us. They make the money, they decide what it's worth. I mean, it's not even a contest. Like, it's not even a concept. It just shows how astronomically confused we are about the system of white supremacy racism and white people dominating all areas of people activity. Really have to get a grasp of that, and all throughout the known universe, not just USA, whatever that means, known universe. That's why the currency in Zimbabwe, they talked about that. The currency over there is nothing. Same thing with Haiti. The currency is nothing. Why? Because white people say so. And they'll continue to say so. And white people have said so for about the past 1,000 years, that the currency is not going to be worth toilet paper in Zimbabwe and Haiti. Why? Because we still hate Robert Mugabe. That's why. Now, cheer about that. You're liberated Zimbabwe. And same thing for Haiti. Cheer about that. Can't even afford toilet paper. Cheer about that. Global system. Did we miss anybody? Anything else? Folks want to make sure they got in, not related to TV, before we wrap up.
Yes.
Retired firefighter.
Just thinking. Yes, sir. I was just thinking about Miss C.O.W.S. I think that is her using all of those metaphors is I think the word is a prerequisite for getting a job in what is identified as quote unquote mainstream outlets like the one she works for. You can't, in other words, you can't speak directly on racism, white supremacy, what it is and how it works. You probably wouldn't get the job. And if you do it, once you have the job, that probably would be a condition of getting fired. Does that make sense?
He said fired. Yeah, that makes sense, especially if she is non-white. You better be real careful. You certainly don't want to be coming here being accurate about white supremacy rate. You better be discrimination, bias, extremism, prejudice. You better have a whole bucket of wacky and vague terms, and certainly don't be talking about white people like, oh yeah, the pink slip. I don't think anybody said that they thought she was white. That is wacky. I think, unless I'm messed, don't let me, lie on any of y'all, but I don't think anybody who shared about Miss C.O.W.S, I don't think anybody said that they thought she was white. Like, man. That would certainly, yeah, you better be careful. Don't come in here being no uppity colored gal, even high yellow. Don't come in here being uppity, whole lot of You saw how we thought about Kamala Harris and obesity.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Even in her time, even in her time off, let's say she does an interview on a quote unquote grassroots outlet, and her job gets that tape, she would be in some trouble. She'd be in some trouble from there. I would think the way things go, in other words, the system of racist white supremacy is much prevalent on viewing their employees, especially the non-white employees on a job like that, and they would quickly get rid of her and hire another black person or non-white person. Just my thoughts.
They can quickly get rid of you. Absolutely. Dang. Yeah. That's, I have to see if anybody listening to the archives, if you take a gander, you can search, see what she looks like, maybe look over some years, maybe see what she looked like younger, see what she looks like now, before the COVID, see what she looks like. Odette Youssef, she works at NPR. She has lots of reports. We've heard her many times over the years for the compensatory call-in specifically, but you can write, see if you think she is classified as white or not. I definitely think if she is classified as not white, she would have much less allowance to speak freely. Said that yesterday, said certain people's freedoms to speak are being strengthened while other people's ability to speak is being lessened. That's the way that Odette Youssef better say, like, exactly. You better not say white people can say whatever they want and fired. Victim. Did you have commentary?
Yes, sir. I just had a couple things I wanted to add. I will look into the information about how the land was taken back from the Rhodesians. But if it was violence, that was needed to take it back. I will stand on it. It was justified. And finally, I would like to remind other victims that COVID will disproportionately affect non-white people. I myself, I believe I contracted another variant of it, and a couple of my care mates are also stricken with some kind of ailment. And there's reports that there's this report from Nebraska medicine, that COVID-19 variants are going around in April of 2025. So people should take precautions by, drinking more fluids, wearing a mask, stuff like that, just to prevent any unwanted ailments or other issues. But that's it. Thanks for taking my call.
I don't know. Robert Kennedy Jr. and them say, man, get out of here, all your wacky Rona conspiracies and mask, boogeyman and jab. Ooh, get on. That's what they say. I'm not loud. You got to laugh to keep from crying, but I mean, hey, you do have. That is about exactly what has been said, coming here with all this Rona mask and vaccine and taking it serious and poppycock. You could say it 2 times. That's what I said when they were talking about the measles vaccine. I wasn't even talking about COVID specifically, but I mean, that the doctor for booster shots, this is his book that he just published. I think it was 2 weeks ago. He was talking about the measles outbreak in Texas. But he said with all of these white people, and that's large pockets of wealthy white people, and even some not so wealthy white people, saying, I don't do no jab, I don't do no vaccine, I don't do all that. And this is even before COVID. We've been talked about this with Dr. Welsing too. And the author, he's a doctor too, but the author of that book, Booster Shots, he said you end up with pockets of people who are already vulnerable, Who more vulnerable than Leroy, Lakeisha, South Side of Chicago? Pockets of people who are already vulnerable. And then you start having large chunks of the population not vaccinated, not to mention all of the infrastructure erosion. They put lead in the water and no drugstores. You can't get a hospital and all the rest of it. Like, wow. I mean, you have any sort of health issue, whew, black get back, they're going to really get backed up. And I mean, that might be as intended. As intended. But that is at least some, I am not a medical doctor, so I do not know. But I think at least having sniffles might give you some qualifications. I'm at least going to give my view on the current status of health and what is happening. And my view is take COVID seriously, that's what the position that I took from the beginning. We should take it serious, get more information. I'm not a doctor. This is not one that you want to it's all conspiracy, and I believe Brother Robert F. Kennedy, we're not going to vaccine us to death, and that's how little EJ got that autism. You going around putting needles in everybody, and you don't want to be wrong on this one. Take it serious. I think makes logical sense. Take it serious. Any hoodles, we'll be back on Monday. No, Tuesday, 22nd. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, Tuesday. Got it together. And then Neutralizing Workplace Racism Thursday and book club on Friday. Maybe should have said the book club should have been mandatory for Mr. Bolden's book. I had a hard time picking a book that was a part, like I think I waited until the day before. I had like 3 books. And I could not make up my mind for anything. I was so into. I guess that was why. You can't say the book is going to be mandatory and can't even make. So yeah, that's why I should have. If I had known we were going to pick this book and then it was going to be, all that, I would have said, dang, you should have tuned in. But Abraham Bolden's The Echo from Dealey Plaza has been amazing. And then they're releasing JFK Files as we are reading. So it's been current events and then the book and JFK. Like, wow. And think of JFK as racists killed JFK. They have whole books, Nazis killed JFK. I don't think that is the common way we think about it at all, but yes, racists killed, because they'll do the same thing that Odep Yusuf say, extremists, right-wingers, hardliners. They'll do that. So, racists, white supremacists killed JFK and MLK. And Malcolm X, and Fred Hampton, and Patrice Lumumba. It was just go all the way through. Some of the exact same racists sometimes. Any hoodles. Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Tomorrow is Columbine Day. My goodness, this would be one. So instead of TV, Turner Diaries for sure. If you've not read the young fella, he said, man, that little race soldier rascal in Wisconsin talking about he trying to start a race war and shut down the systems and all of that and save the white race. Remind me of them reports. They've been going out here and attacking the power plants across the continent. Yes, they have. And where is all of that located? Even bombing a federal building. Where is all of that located? The Turner Diaries. Again, the 3rd book. We've had the Catherine Massey Book Club since 2012. 13 years uninterrupted. That was the 3rd book we read. You can listen to it. It's not even a big book. It really is. It's a short, and it's a children's book. Say that one more time, Brother Gus. It's a white children's book. That's in the order. Since we love watching TV, that's one of the scenes that I gushed about. Like, oh my God, white dad is reading time with his white son. What is the literature of choice? The Turner Diaries. And then they go rob a bank. Banks, plural. If you have not read the Turner Diaries for this here McVeigh Day and then tomorrow Columbine, The flippin' AI chatbot told me, Gus T, I bet you them Columbine cowards, I bet you they read Turner Diaries. I said, no way, how you think that? He said, that book, that's published. Denver area, that's a hotbed of white extremism and white supremacy. Colorado even comes up in the book, Brother Gus. I said, no way. Yes way. If you've not read the Turner Diaries, you should read the Turner Diaries. You can listen to it, Archives, Book Club, read it, either or. Read it with the family. Talk about it. And Columbine tomorrow. The deposition is released in 2027 for Isaiah Shoals. We got his father in the archives just from months ago. For Isaiah Shoals, definitely make sure your children should not be ignorant about Columbine. They're going to mention that with Phoenix Ikner. No, they're going to bring up Columbine. They should know about Isaiah Shoals. They should know about Kyle Velasquez. We heard that from Michael Shoals. He said Kyle Velasquez, non-white. They went in that library and just slaughtered 2 non-white children. Killed 14 people now in total. 2 of them non-white in a school that didn't even have that many non-white people. Go back in here, archives. We had Jeffrey Cass and Michael Shoals, Dave Cullen, us reading that in the book club. But, man, this is, and it's Hitler's birthday tomorrow. So much, the Boston bombing, so much this time of year. Take some time to read and examine the history of why this is such a significant moment on the plantation, at least in this part of the world. That's it. Sobriety would be best. I mean, if they're slamming 12-year-old black boys' heads off wooden blocks in the lavatory, maybe we don't need to be too juiced up, liquored up. Maybe we need to protect our brain computer, and then maybe we can protect our children a little better. Creator, we ask that you help us invest our time and energy to replace white supremacy with justice immediately. We ask that you help us not waste other non-white people's time and energy, including our own. No, stop name-calling black people. Stop gossiping. Stop producing throwaway offspring. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.